All right, people. This is the Union Tapes, episode number 9. And it's with a guy called Mike Rooftop Escamilla. Many of you out there will already know who that is. Rooftop sprung into the BMX spotlight around 1993 and scored the last part in the then game-changing VHS Dirty Deeds made by Dave Parrick, which was the big video release in 1994. From there, he established himself as a solid fixture within the BMX scene and was pretty much in every media you could get your eyes on or any event that you could see. He's still riding at a high level today and has been through every BMX era since 1993 and remained relevant to this day. There's a lot of views in this one that will polarise a lot of people out there, I think. But it's all coming from an educated place, and it will definitely make you think. This is a long one, but it's real good. Enjoy. Give us a like, comment, and subscribe if you like it. Laters. All right, give us just a brief intro of like where you was born and raised and the usual kind of stuff up until you sort of was aware of life.
All right. Hey, what's up? I am Mike Escamilla. Everyone knows me, I guess, in BMX is Rooftop. I'm from Southern California. I grew up here in the heart of it, and I'm still here. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes I'm over it. Yeah, that's it.
You were born like in the same area as what you live now, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Los Angeles, and so I'm not exactly the same. I'm about 45 minutes to an hour where I grew up. My parents are still in the same house, but I am closer to. I'm in LA, basically, like closer to like Hollywood, and where the movie studios are for work. It makes it a little bit easier. Yeah.
Cool. And what did you have like before you found BMX? Was there something else that you was messing about with, or how did you stumble into BMX?
I was pretty lucky. In my neighborhood where I grew up, there was like I don't know, maybe 10 kids, 10 boys, and they all rode bikes, down at the local jumps and rode around town. So, and I was the youngest of them all, and so I just rode around with them. And there were some jumps on the way to school. Once I get to 7th grade, when I started riding about 6th grade, 7th grade, there was jumps. So we all rode to school together, and I went to the jumps. We'd go early, so we'd ride the jumps for about an hour before school and for a couple hours after school. It was on the way home.
Oh, right.
And that's just how I got into it. And then they all sort of got out of it, and I just stayed in.
So you was riding them jumps on a BMX, not on just like a random bike?
No, yeah, I had a BMX bike in 6th grade, maybe 5th grade. Would have been 88, maybe 5th grade, maybe. My parents got me a GT Performer for Christmas, a black one, and that was the bike. And then like a couple blocks away, there was like a church that had like a mound of dirt that you could just jump. It was only probably about 1.5 feet tall, but it was like a lip to flat. Yeah. I remember I learned one-handers, and that was just what I started doing. And then I was dirt jumping after that, like all the way riding bike to school. School was 3 miles away.
3 miles?
Yeah, so we ride. The jumps were maybe like a half mile from school. And it was where all the kids taking the bus could drive by and watch us jump in the morning. So we put on a show. We just ride the jumps every day. It was called the Pit. And I have pictures actually. If you can find pictures of like the dude, or not. Everyone thinks it's a dude. If you Google "dude from Metallica rides BMX," there's photos of him jumping at the pit, but it's not actually the guy from Metallica. It's this other guy. There's photos of some dudes from the 70s riding these jumps.
Oh, okay.
So it's pretty cool. Like it was like a pit with like a berm that jumped into the pit and like some flyouts. And so that place has been around for a long time.
Oh, cool, man. And that was your first BMX, was the Performer?
Performer. I mean, I had like a Murray, and I had a 16-inch before that and a Murray, but that was just, pedaling around the streets, learning how to ride a bike. But the first bike I ever tried to jump was that Performer.
All right, it's a big upgrade from the, what was it, a Team Murray or a Pooch Murray or something?
I have no idea. I was like second, third grade. I think I had this little gold and black 16-inch, and then my brother got the Murray, and then I sort of just took that.
Oh, okay.
But I wasn't a BMXer.
Yeah.
I just was doing that, just riding.
Had you seen like BMX mags or videos or anything before that? Or?
I mean, you'd seen the movie Rad, right? That's it.
Yeah.
And then my first magazine I ever bought, I was in Ralph's or Vaughn's. I think it was Vaughn's. It's like a grocery store here. And it was the Matt Hoffman Go issue with him doing the flip fakie on the cover.
Oh, okay.
That's the first BMX magazine I ever bought. So that was like my first real introduction into magazines. And then there would be BMX Pluses, and I would get some every once in a while. But, my parents weren't buying me magazines. But, every once in a while, few months, I'd be begging for it, and they'd buy me one.
So that was 1990, I think that.
Would have been 1990, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the first BMX, and then I think I had a GT demo tape. And I don't know where I got it, but it was like Magoo interviewing like Josh White and Ikeola, and that was like the only bike video I had. So that was it. And then the first bike video I ever saw, the real one, would have been right when I met. So this is years of just the GT demo tape. And then a couple years later when I met Brian Castillo, which would have been like 9th grade or something, first day I met, he had Head First. And so crazy enough, he let me borrow it. Some kid he didn't even know. And so that was how I saw Head First.
Oh, wow.
But I think in between there, I don't think I saw any videos. Maybe the first video I ever bought of my own was Roger's Garage, standard video. So maybe that was before that, but I don't think so.
No, I think Head First was 91, I think. So,
but I don't know. It would have been. Yeah, it would have been close then, right? Right. I went to Roger's Garage afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there wasn't much BMX to be seen, and with that, I think there was something good about that because I would see what was in the magazines or in the videos, and then I would just go do it, and I just assumed everyone was doing it. Like when I saw Trash, right? Like that was a couple years later in high school. When I saw Trash, I don't know if we're jumping forward, I just assumed everyone did handrails and everybody did tricks off handrails. I just assumed it. So then I just was like, I'm going to do every trick I know off a handrail. I just assumed everyone was doing it. And then I learned later when I met Parrick and we went riding for the first time that no one was doing that. It was just, a couple people. I just assumed. That was the great thing about seeing it. You see one thing and then just assume, okay, well, now I have a month or months to learn this and work on it because that's what people are doing.
So who was the riding crew then?
Well, after 7th and 8th grade, I was just the kids in the neighborhood. And then when I got into high school, those kids kind of stopped a bit, like they all started getting into cars because they were a couple years older than me and in trouble. And so I rode, let's see who I ride with. Before I met Brian Castillo, I actually went and rode with the skaters. So I grew up with Jeremy Ray and Jonas Wray and Paul Luna, and they were all pro skaters at that point in high school. So when they went and rode, I just went and rode street with them. And I went to the dirt jumps. There was another guy named Tim Guerrero who went to the same high school with me. He rode a cruiser, and we both raced at that time. So we rode the jumps together. And that was pretty much it. And I had I had a couple other friends that rode a little bit, here and there. But mostly it was with the skaters, or if I was dirt jumping, it was with Tim. Until I met Castillo, the guy at the bike shop. Brian lived about 13 miles away from me. And the guy at the bike shop, Brian, was like, hey, there's these jumps, which was the ditch jumps, Brian's ditch jumps in Placentia. So we drove over there, and I met Brian. And Brian had never really seen anybody do anything either. Like I had built like a couple sets of doubles, but he had full on doubles, and he'd never
near the road.
Yeah, that went down in that ditch. Yeah,
yeah. That was in a lot of videos.
Real jumps, and so it was kind of some of my first time doing tricks over real jumps. But I was like trying to do everything I could over them, 360 them, and they were big doubles back then. And he was just like, "Who is this crazy kid with a K&AC sticker?" K&AC was like a a radio station, like a heavy metal radio station here in the 90s. And when you're a kid, every sticker, you just put on your bike. So I had this big KNAC sticker on this Haro invert I had at the time, and which I would just get from the neighbor kids. I would break bikes all the time. And so they would have like, oh, I'll have this old one. So all those other kids that were riding before, because I started breaking bikes. Like I would break a bike every couple months. And so I would just get whatever bike I could get. Like the first bike I ever bought on my own was a Haro Sport, 91 Haro Sport.
The Bashguard.
Yeah, the one that the caveman's modeled after.
Okay, yeah.
And then after that, I think I bought a homeless Mac. And I had cracked the homeless Mac in 16 places. Like every weld was cracked. Like I just would, I had I had an Elf. I had like, at the point before the Haro, I would take whatever bike that any kid in the neighborhood would give me. Like I rode like Raleighs. I just took all the stickers off because I was like, a bike is a bike. Who cares,
So how was the progression onto like riding a lot of street from jumping about? Like,
well, I was riding street in 8th grade, but I was just like, I was just riding around, jumping stairs.
Yeah.
I wasn't really grinding yet. And I don't think. And then when I met Brian Castillo back at that day, we rode his jumps, and then he's like, let's go ride street. And I was like, all right. And I just kind of rode stuff, but I don't know if I must have been grinding already, but I'm sure I was, because I remember he ice picked a handrail, like a 4-stair, and just nicked the end of it. And I was like, oh my God, this dude's doing handrails, right? And it was like a tink, and then it was on. And then I was like, oh, now I have someone else to do this with. So then I would ride on the weekends. I would ride. He came up, but not as much as I went down to his house. I would ride my bike to his house every day, or at least one day a weekend. And in the summer, every day I would ride there and ride back, because we didn't spend night at each other's houses. So we'd ride there and ride back, which is 13 miles over a couple big hills. It was like a couple hour ride, you know what I mean? 2.5 hour ride. So it was like a long ways to go. And then we would just ride all day. And then that's it, man. We would ride behind a place called the Boston Store. It had by his house had a ton of, both our houses, oddly enough, there's like a main strip. His house, I think it was Yorba Linda Boulevard, and then my house, it was Whittier Boulevard. And it was, those two streets were like skate parks. Tons of banks, tons of ledges, and tons of stuff. We just like had a ton of stuff to ride between our two neighborhoods, and not like a regular amount of stuff. It was like a strip that was 5, 6, 7 miles long of how we would kind of go back and forth from the house. I would go 3 miles this way and 3 miles this way, and there was banks, hips, fences, jumps. There was everything on this thing, ledges. And so we hit, like it was, we really lucked out. I think me and Brian are such a product of our environment.
That was mostly from watching the skateboarders though, than watching.
I was riding with them, right?
Yeah.
So I was, as much as I was watching them, I was part of that. At that time, I felt more like I was part of the skateboard industry than I was bike industry, because I didn't know anything about the bike industry. And, my buddies were all getting sponsored, and we were like driving down to San Diego and riding the Blockhead House ramp. And at that point too, early in high school, Jeremy Ray, he was a year older than us, and he had a car. And so we would go places. Like we would put my bike on a bike rack or in the trunk and wire it shut. And even in high school, like my sophomore year, we would do road trips all over the Southwest, like at 15 years old. And like Jeremy made money and Paul made a little money. So like they would just pay for everything. And we most other 15-year-olds aren't driving 2 or 3 states away. You know what I mean? Yeah. During the summer with no parents. So we were just doing that. So I 100%, my bike riding in the early years was 100% influenced by skateboarding. Not because I was about skateboarding, but it's because all the spots we went to were skateboard spots. Because there was 3 of them and 1 of me, and we weren't going to dirt jumps, were we? Yeah. We had to go places that they could skate. So I would ride places that were just weird ledges or lots of little curb manual pads or like small hips, and all these famous places like Pioneer and Baldy Pipe and Shafee School and all these San Pasquale, all these famous skate spots in Southern California that they were going to because they were shooting photos, and they were real famous for skateboarding. But for me, they were just where I was going with them.
So this was like early 90s then, I guess, right?
Early 90s. 90s, yeah. There were the progression from like meeting Brian Castillo and 8th grade to like 10th grade was really a lot. So I started high school. I graduated high school in 91, I believe. And so in 92. So in 1992, I was doing handrails end of 91, probably into the sand. I did some into the sand with the POWs. And then there was like a handicap rail. I was jumping on a bench and then jumping onto the handicap rail because it was too tall. But there was like there was the rail at El Dorado, which is Brian Castillo's school. I did, but there was a big sort of 10-stair rail that was in my town called, it was at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church. And I did that first day of sophomore year after school. We pedaled down there and I did that rail for the first time. And that's the rail. I had a couple clips in this blockhead video, skate blockhead video called Debbie Does Blockhead, where I had like a no-footed can-can and a 10-stair handrail. And that's that day, my first day. So it would have been September of 1992. I did that 10-stair rail. And that was a big rail at the time, like a real legit one on the side with like a 10-stair drop, a 10-foot drop or 8-foot drop on the side. And that was like the first, like, oh, this is a real deal. You're dead rail, And back then that was a big rail.
And how old was you then?
What's that?
How old was you then?
I would have been 13 when I started high school. So I would have turned 14 like a month earlier.
Oh, wow. So you was a kid, yeah.
Yeah. I was a kid. I was already doing a bunch of grinds and like handrails that I could like rails and things like that, but like that was the first real, like I'd done El Dorado, I think at that point, which is Brian's school, but it was a 7-stair and it was square and it didn't seem as dangerous. There was a planter next to it. So it didn't seem, this one was like, and this one was one the skaters were like, oh, this is a real rail. Like this is a big deal. You know what I mean? And I remember years later, James Shepard had seen the video and he was like, who the fuck is this little kid doing handrails? Because it was as big as the handrails they were doing or bigger, because the ones they did in trash were, the ones in Texas at the time were like real fat. A lot of them, if you watch it, they're fat and they're low and they're mellow. And this one was like, and there was what they did do other ones, but this one was like, like a proper, like, I mean, even now, I'd be scared to do that rail now.
What did the skaters make of that?
I mean, they were doing it on the skateboard too. So
it's like,
like me and Jeremy, especially because Jeremy did bigger stuff. And he said this before in interviews that like we would ride together and I was the guy he would do bigger stuff with. Right. Oh, okay. So like we would do, like the roof gap, the famous roof gap that I originally had the first photo of myself 316. We'd already jumped that and he was alling it, doing stuff over it for our Airwalk catalog for Airwalk, and Sturt shot it. Dan Sturt, who was a skate photographer.
Yeah.
And so that day, like I jumped it with him, and there was a photo of me and him jumping it together, and it ended up in the Airwalk catalog.
Oh, but I've never seen that picture either.
I have it somewhere. I wish I would have known how to showed it. It was like the guy, and we've wanted to do like, there was like we jumped triple set stairs together and things like that. Things that were a bit bigger. I think he had someone to do it with instead of like no one,
That's cool. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And how long did it take for the media to sort of catch on to what was going on? Was that quite slow then, I guess? If you did a rail in 92, nobody really knew.
No one knew who I was. I'd never met anybody. I'd never met anybody. What's that?
No, but they didn't even know it was happening, I guess.
No, because we didn't know anybody.
It's weird that like it didn't, from the skateboard scene, it didn't kind of reach the BMX scene. You would have just assumed that.
No, I don't think back then. I mean, because back then you got to think like BMX had died with Go and everything is gone, and then Ride just started coming out again, right? So there wasn't really anybody. And then I started going to the POW house because me and Brian were riding to Sheep Hills, which was 26 miles from my house. We'd ride to Sheep Hills with like $3 in our pocket, ride the jumps all day and ride home. Like I think about that at like 14, 15 years old, and my parents let me go, like no cell phone, no nothing, no idea where we were, and I would meet guys, and I met the POWs, and then they invited us over sometime around that time too, 92, 93. And so I started riding the POW house, and those were the first, well, actually, would have been the POW house would have been right in 93 because I never rode ramps before. I rode this ditch that was called the Euclid V, and you could see tricks of it from in there from Dirty Deeds. I mean, like trying to peg stall a fence. It's that ditch. And it was close to the ramp. It was full tranny, and so I'd never really ridden ramps. So I went to the POW house with the first ramps I rode, because the only other skate park was Marina Valley, which they had those early BS consoles, and they would let bikes in sometimes, but it was really far away. It was like an hour and a half drive. And like my parents would have to drive out there and sit there. But that didn't happen because the first spine ramp I ever rode was Oklahoma. So September of 1993. So that was the first spine ramp I ever rode. So I was riding the POW house, and at some point, and I was starting to go to like S&M like demos and S&M stuff, because I was like a full S&M kid. It was like my dream to ride for S&M. And so I think Chris Moeller told, Brad McDonald, like, hey, there's this kid you should shoot photos of. And so Brad McDonald came out to shoot me in my neighborhood. And we shot 3 photos that day. We shot that handrail that I'd done, and that ended up as an ad for WearWear, Big Island's company.
Okay.
They didn't ask, they just put it, and I kind of met Big Island. So he was like, sure, let's use this photo. It was pretty funny. There was another bank I rode, and I did a bar spin off the bank that ended up a cover of UK Ride. I'm in a green shirt, and I'm like,
I know the one. Yeah.
You didn't see street bar spins back then, right? It was just a dirt strip.
The background was all black, was it?
Because we shot it at night. Yeah. But you didn't see. No one did bar spins on street. You know what I mean? But I was a kid. I was like, it's a jump to me, so I was just jumping. And then I shot the 360 strobe center spread for Ride magazine. So my first photo shoot was a center spread in US Ride, a cover of UK, and an ad.
Oh, not bad.
That was like, I was like, I guess this is how it is. We just shoot photos and everything shows up as photos. It was crazy.
And that was 93.
That would have been 93. It was 93 because we shot those photos before we went to Oklahoma in 1993. I asked if I could go with the POW. POW was like 8 or 9 of us in a minivan with Treanor and a bunch of other dudes from like other countries, Axel and Povah and everybody. We all went. It might have been Clymer too. We all went to the 93 BS contest, and I was a little kid. I was 15. And so, and that's where I got my nickname Rooftop. And everyone thought it was because of that 360 photo came out right about the same time. Yeah. But it wasn't because of that. So, but that's why, because that photo would have come out. So we would have shot that photo probably like April, May of 93. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the name. Everyone always asks about that. How did you get the name Rooftop?
Well, I mean, that seems like old news now, but on that trip, I was young. I'd never been anywhere. And so I just talked a lot like any 15-year-old would, you know what I mean? And they just would say, like, they would just start chanting like Rooftop. Like, and it was because they were going to put me on the roof of the car, like the grandma from National Lampoons. But I didn't know what it meant. So I was like, I don't know if I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And that was a cross between like maybe Jay Miron, Ian Morris, Keith Treanor, coming up with that. I don't know exactly. And we went to hot bikes 2 weeks before the contest. We slept under the ramps with scorpions and stuff. And that was it, man. That was how it started.
Sweet. Yeah, Stuart King, he tells that story. Yeah, we interviewed him and he said the same one. So
yeah, he was there, and like he was young, right? We're about the same age, so he was I think a year older than me, and he was doing like no-hander landers, and people were losing their minds. And I remember there was a practice day before the contest, and like I was just some kid, right? But it was having like a box jumping session, session, you know. And so I'm like, I'm sending everything, and so I remember I did a tail over the box, which was not that it was a big deal, but it was a big deal for a kid they'd never heard of. And the kid, I was a scrawny little kid, like, you know, little kid to be tail in a big box, you know. And then I double bar spun the box, and it was my first double bar spin I ever landed because I would do 540 bar spins, and I would just send them and hope they went. And it was the first one I ever pulled was over that. And at the time, it was only Luc-e and Jay Miron doing that. Yeah, that was it, you know. So I remember Jay was like, because I'd kind of become friends with Jay a little bit because I'd been at Hoffman bikes. And then I did a 720 over the box and just looped it out. I looped out, but it landed, just looped it out. My chain exploded or something. And I remember Jay going, dude, you Rooftop, you got to pull that. And that was sort of like after that box, that I kind of, for me, that box jumping session was what gave me my start in BMX as far as like the magazines really paying attention then. And when I went home, they were like, oh, this is a kid, this is a dude. We're doing this. You know, he's a part of it. He's a part of us now. Because I didn't, I think I got, I think 15th or something in that out of like 100 people or something. And I remember I beat Pat Miller. And that was like, he was the only person I knew who had a name that I beat. And I was like, I can't believe I beat somebody. But I think I got 15th in the contest because I just exploded everywhere. But so for me, it wasn't that I did good at that contest. It was that that box jumping contest. I mean, box jumping section with all the big pros and everybody. And I don't want to say holding my own, but I definitely wasn't like, you know.
He was hanging, yeah.
I was hanging, you know what I mean? I was definitely there in the right place, you know?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's a good place to be at that age, yeah. That's a good place to be.
I was little, man. I was a little kid.
Yeah. So was you on Hoffman bikes already at this point? Or
no, I didn't. At that point, I didn't ride for anybody. Okay. And then that was about the same time that the Airwalk came out.
Okay.
And so I called Airwalk. I was like, hey, maybe I can get some shoes for this. You know what I mean? And they were like, no, you're not good enough to be on the team. And so as a little kid, you're like, what? F these dudes. Because at the time, Airwalk was everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember. And
so Paul Luna was getting shoes from Enns at the time. And in that time, too, we had started to film for Dirty Deeds.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you about it.
93, 94, we filmed for Dirty Deeds. So I had a little sponsor me video that I had, and then I took some that I filmed earlier. And then Dave Parrick gave me some clips from Dirty Deeds, and we just put it on the thing. We gave it to Don Brown sometime the end of 93. So in 94, the first contest in 94 in Marina Valley, I had just gotten sponsored by Enns. And so I had an Enns, like that brand Fila. Remember that shoe company Fila?
Yeah.
Like, you know, a rip-off Fila shirt for Enns. They'd sent me one pair of shoes and one shirt. And so that was my first sponsor, really, Enns.
Oh,
and so after that, I don't know who the first person I rode for bikes. I want to say it was Family Bikes. Okay. Homeless bikes had gone away, and James Shepard started something called Family, which was like Taj.
I remember.
And all the dudes from Homeless, and he asked me to be a part of Family at some point, somewhere around there, but it never happened. So it just never happened. So it never really went. GT asked me to ride for him around then too, because they were coming up with a fueler, and they said they would let me stay in the hotels if I went to contests, and I was like, I'm not doing that. So I didn't ride for GT. I wanted to be part of a team, you know. Around there too, I got sponsored by Wilkerson Airlines. So I had sponsor offers, but they never really were all sponsors, you know.
Yeah.
I got sponsored by Wilkerson Airlines at the time, and that was sometime during '93.
So you're on Dirty Deeds on Wilkerson Airlines, is that right?
No, I never actually had a Wilkerson Airlines bike.
Oh, okay.
I always had a Hoffman Condor or an S&M or a Homeless Mac, whatever I was riding at the time. But I never actually got a bike from Wilkerson. I was on it for about 4 months, or maybe a couple months actually. That might have been the end of '93, and because I rode the next. I rode a couple contests. I went back to Oklahoma, rode that contest, and I don't think I rode for anybody but Enns still. And then that's it. And then there was 93 or 94, right? So 94, we're doing that. And then sometime in 94, I got sponsored by Wilkerson, and he sent me a pair of bars and a stem. But then in Marina Valley 95, when I showed up, Ron kept telling me I was going to get this new bike called the Pork, the first one. And when I showed up, Cameron Birdwell, who no one knew who he was on the Pork, you know? And I mean, look how good he is. But I remember as a kid, I was like, who the fuck is this kid? Who is this kid? You know what I mean? Like, I've been waiting for a bike. And then before Ron could get to that contest, Hoffman asked me to ride for him before the contest. And I was like, yep. I didn't tell Ron. I was like, yeah, no problem. I mean, that time, Hoffman bikes was Jay Miron and Dave Mira.
Yeah, it was
I mean, and Matt Hoffman. It was like the dream. For me, it was like, there'll never be a bigger team in BMX ever.
Yeah.
especially from the night. As far as like iconic dudes, so I was like, I'm a part of that. Yes. So I put a jersey on and rode, and then Ron got there after the contest, and he lost his mind, and rightfully so. He was pretty bummed, and that sort of we kind of ruined a friendship for a little bit. But me and Ron are really great now. Like it's not there's a couple months of that of him. Yeah. And then but like Ron is he's someone I really really appreciate as a friend now. But he might not even remember any of that. It was such a little deal, Yeah. But then I was on Hoffman, and then after that, I started going to all the contests because Matt was flying me to all the BS contests, and that's when things really, really changed, as far as like traveling.
Let me go back a second because I think we missed 30 Ds. Because I wanted to ask you about 30 Ds. Yeah. So, how much did you know about like? How did you end up meeting Parrick, and how did you end up coming about filming for 30 Ds? Like. That was part of your coming out video, right? Really, for most people. I
think I met Dave once at the POW house.
Okay.
David moved out from Texas, from the POW house, and neither one of us thought anything of it. We just rode, and that was it. And then I saw him at Sheep Hills, and at the time I was barely a ramp rider, I'm more of a dirt jumper. So when he saw me at ramps, we were in the backyard around the POW house, and I was just learning how to ride ramps. So it probably didn't look like much, you know what I mean? And then we went to the dirt train. I saw him at Sheep Hills, and at Sheep Hills I was tail open jumps and doing 360 tabletops and double bar spinning 540 things, and I was like doing bar hop to like swing around opening cans and all sorts of stuff and goofy ass shit. And he was like, "Yo, I'm making a new video. You want to be in it?" And he didn't know that I was a street rider either. And so we filmed that. I'm like, "Okay, well, we should come ride the stuff at my house." And so this is so weird. Dave never wanted me to pick me up from my house. He would come. I mean, I was a little kid. He would drive over from Long Beach. He would always say, "I don't want to come to your house." So he would tell me to meet him at Burger King. That was like 4 blocks from my house. 10 a.m. Saturday morning. And so I would go down there at 10 a.m. and Dave wouldn't show up till 1 p.m. Except I would have to sit in Burger King parking lot, sitting there riding a parking block for hours because he had no way to get a hold. I had no way to get a hold of him.
Yeah.
There was no cell phone, so I just had to wait there. And so that would happen every Saturday for a year. Every Saturday. And so once he didn't know I street rode, and street ride at that point was like what I did. Like I had sort of transitioned from being a dirt jumper to a street rider with Brian. And so once he saw that I rode street, and I didn't, like I said, I didn't know I was doing anything different. I thought I was like, we'll ride street. I didn't know that everybody wasn't doing tricks off handrails.
Yeah.
I didn't know that people weren't all jumping roof gaps. I didn't know that we weren't doing gap to rails. I just didn't know. You know what I mean? I was just like, this was what there was to ride. I was like, oh, here's a ledge. I could probably jump out to that rail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when he got there, he's like, what is going on? You know what I mean? And he I think it was a bigger deal than I realized. And he was like, oh, dude, this kid's nuts. And so we did that for over a year. We filmed every Saturday.
What were some of them early tricks that he saw that you think?
I mean, it was like, I think it wasn't even as much the tricks as much it was the spots. Like I said, I grew up in a place that had really, really unusually cool spots. So like there was big fence stalls, like big ones. And to me, I'm like, well, I'd seen people peg stall a fence. Mine just happened to be 4 feet bigger. I didn't, I'm like, that's what I had. So that's what you tried to ride. That's what I tried to mimic, And there would be gap to down ledges. And there would be like, let's see what else we were doing. We were doing gap to rails and like rail to bar spin, rail to no handers, switch handed rails, no footers, can rails. I just was like, this is what everybody's doing, right? No footers on rails to manuals. I learned crooked grinds, so I did a crooked grinds and jump over rails. Like all these things I just thought people did, I
was going to ask you this. So I watched Dirty Deeds like the other week, your part, and I saw, like you said, gap to rail, and I thought, I don't know if that was ever done at that point in time. And then I saw a crooked grind, and I was like, don't think that was ever done at that point in time.
Definitely not the crooked grind. The gap to rail, the closest thing that there was to that in trash, the goot, there's a rail that the goot goes down, and there's kind of a sideways ledge, and he kind of rides up this ledge and kind of jumps 90 onto it. It's not really a gap.
Okay.
Like this. That would have been the closest thing.
So you had like a gap to rail.
No, this was like a gap. And the thing about that rail is you can't tell from the angle, but it's actually a gap to over rail.
Okay.
Is the handrail lined up with the left side of the the left side of the ledge.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I had to
kind of went across it.
Kind of got across it a little bit. I used to do a thing too, because that rail was like a mellow rail. It was like a handicap rail with like maybe like a 4-foot gap to it. But next to that handicap rail was a 2-stair. So there was like you could hit the second half of that handicap rail from the 2-stair, and it was real low. It was like
okay,
2 feet tall, but it was my wrong side. Right, I wasn't doing switch rails. So I used to do what they call snaggletooths. Right, what people that over toothpick on the other side with a bike hanging off the ceiling. I used to do those for dirty deeds, but I would just tink it. And I remember telling Dave I don't want to put it in because I thought it was so stupid looking.
So it's like a goofy hanger.
Yeah, it's like like a hanger, but you weren't hanging the back end over. The back end never went. You put the front tire.
You're pushing the front end instead of
over. And so I did those back then, but I thought they were so stupid looking. I was like, we're not putting that in my part. There's a couple things like that ended up becoming something better later.
And then also the grind to hop over into the bank.
So
I don't think that was done then either.
No, it wasn't. And I remember I did grind. We were coming back from San Diego. I think we were coming back from Mission Trails or something. Povah, Dave, Treanor, and I stopped there because that was San Dieguito High, and I'd been there before. And I was like, I think I can grind jump over that because I'd done. We'd learned grind to jump overs with Brian Castillo. And I think Ian might have done them then. I don't know. But grind jump overs, we were just doing them on flat bars. I was like, oh, there's one that's doable. You know what I mean? And I remember Keith Treanor was over it. He was like, I don't want to watch this kid try this anymore, because it took me a while. But I remember my plan was to do it, jump over to half bar spin. Okay. That was my plan. Because I knew if I could get over it, I could half bar spin, right? Like, it takes nothing. But then he was just like, you can almost might even hear it in the video. He goes, all right, let's go. As soon as I landed. But yeah, that went there. And the crooked grind was actually, I had learned that on a little flat bar by my dad's work. My dad took me to work, and so I could just pedal around like a business park. And there's a little yellow rail, and I learned crooked grinds on that. I just thought about it, like, oh, it'd be cool. I think I had done a double peg and it had gone over into a crooked, and it hit my sprocket and like slid out because sprockets were so big. You could only do crooked grinds one direction. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, and I was doing opposite feebles, or maybe I was trying to do opposite double pegs, and it went over, right? Because I was all squirrely, and it went over and grinded, and I slid off the end of it. I was like, and fell down. I was like, oh shit, you could do this. So then I just learned it that day. And then I was filming for Dirty Deeds, trying to do jump over grinds. There's one in Dirty Deeds that I jump over grind and fall over. Like it's in like the slam section or something. I missed my back peg. It's the rail that I crooked grind in Dirty Deeds. I was doing jump over grinds on it, and one, I hadn't really thought about it, and one, my back wheel didn't clear and it went to crooked, and I fell. I was like, oh, I bet you I could just do that trick here. Because it was kind of like I kind of hadn't thought about it. I was like, I did it once, and then I did it. That was the first crooked grind. Yeah. The second one was on another rail down the street from there later that I did in the Poor Boy video, BMX Men.
I watched that as well. Yeah.
On rail, and that was like a school we called Ricardo Bernardo because we thought it was a school it was something Bernardo, and we thought it was a school for handicapped kids. So being dick kids, we called it Ricardo Bernardo. Well, the skaters called it that, and so that was the first real handrail I'd manual too.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that as well. So was that was the first off as well?
Well, in 1995, at the end of 1995 was the last BS contest, and there was a contest at Stonehenge Skatepark in Florida.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
and there was like a bowl they called the 9 Bowl that went down to the street contest, and in that was a big fat rail that went down this wedge, and I was like, I'm going to manual that rail. I was like, I'm going to manual this rail in my run. And in my run, I manual, and at the end, it slips down and chinks ice, right? But I pulled it. And so I was like, I can manual handrails. And so, and earlier that summer, that was the end of 95, but earlier that summer, me, Jeremy, my buddy Josh, and I think Paul Luna were all on the Warp Tour, the first Warp Tour. And there was a handrail in Salt Lake that was like, that went down the corner of 2 stairs. Like the stairs came down like this. So it went down in like the pocket of a corner of stairs. It was real low, and I double tire rode it. July or June of 95. But it was so short. It was like thunk,
You did it on purpose, or you was meant to manual it?
No, I just was going to double tire ride it.
Oh, okay.
So, because it was so low, I'm like, I bet I could ride that thing. You know what I mean? And so I double toe rode it, and like, I might have put a foot down. I don't remember, but I remember I did it. And so when I went to that contest, I was like, oh, I can manual a handrail, especially a big fat one, because I just rode one that was like this wide, a square one. And then, the first one I ever did for real was that one in BMX Men. At some point, I manualed that one. I only manualed about this far, you know what I mean? But I can't manual with my fingers on my brakes. I don't know how to do that. Everything I do is white knuckled, you know?
Okay.
And so that was the first handrail manual. But on that rail, I used to do regular switch, like double peg, double ice, switch, crook, and manual. I would do everything every side back then in 95.
You was confident on that rail, yeah.
Well, it was just like, I don't know if I was confident, but I just like, crashing didn't matter.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm doing this trick, I can pull or not, I'm going to pull it, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It wasn't about being confident. It was a short enough rail that I was like, I'm not going to die.
That was quite a good standout trick that when I watched it the other day. Like like when you watch it back then, to me, certain things stand out.
The manual?
And yeah, but now watching it and being like, oh, that was never done. That was never done. And the other thing was that like gap to ledge in that video as well.
Well, I don't know. What was it?
Yeah, there's a gap to like concrete ledge of some sort, yeah. And also going backwards down
Hubba Hideout. So that was the first real legit backwards big, like a real legit ledge. Because I had done a how-to in BMX Plus on a little one down some stairs, like backwards grind, a toothpick bonk out. But that was like, me and Brian Castillo drove up in my dad's truck. We drove up to San Francisco to ride Embarcadero and Hubba Hideout. And I was like, I think I can backwards this. And that thing was tall. You know, that thing was like well over the upright. So for me, it was like, this is it. It went from like doing something this tall to doing something, 4 feet tall.
Yeah.
That was the first real backwards one that I'd ever done, but I think you really ever saw anyways. You probably saw some, but I think that was the first. And at that time, that would have been like doing a trick down El Toro. You know what I mean? As far as like famous spots go.
Yeah.
And then soon after that, for filming Monkeys Fly, I did a backwards rail in a run.
Okay.
But that was the first, like, the weird thing about BMX Men was I didn't ride for Poor Boy.
That's what I thought. I was going to ask you. I didn't think you rode for Poor Boy.
I never rode for Poor Boy. Steve was just in town filming Mike Achenbach or somebody else. He's like, oh, film me if you want. Like, we'll give you a little section. I was like, all right. And back then, you just went and rode and did everything you could do,
Yeah.
So we went to a few schools, and then there's dirt jumping stuff in there, too. And that dirt jumping stuff is like a year and a half old at that point. It was old. I just gave him dirt jumping footage of like double bar spins and tail ups and stuff from Sheep Hills that I'd had like a year earlier or something.
Yeah, because you got a full section in that.
Yeah, but I didn't ride for Poor Boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that video was nuts. I mean, that also had Osato's part, which was, if no one's seen it, that part is still better than every mini ramp rider now. He had over spine, tail up, toothpick back.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Like that's insane.
Yeah, I can't remember much of that video.
It's Ice Pick Decades. It had everything.
Yeah,
everything you could think of, Dave did.
What was the crashes on that backwards feeble down that ledge?
I mean, I don't know. There was crashes. There were whatever.
You didn't take any bad ones, though.
I mean, I'm sure I did, but I was also 15 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or 15 or 16, probably 16 or whatever it was, however old I was. 15. So it was just like, yeah, you crashed, but like if I did that crash now, I'd have to go to the goddamn hospital.
It's over.
It's over. Those days are over.
Oh man. What about you're the Etnies guy, so like I wanted to speak to you about Etnies because that was I sort of see that I saw that come up. I was in Cali in '95, and I remember Mike Griffin was going, I've got the rooftop hookup. I'm going to get me some Etnies, and he went to the Etnies warehouse that was in HB or wherever it was, somewhere near there. And then sort of from there, it just grew like really nicely for those guys. And you was the guy who was first. So you were their tentacles basically to get the riders, right? So
I gave at the end of '93, I gave a sponsor me video to John Brown.
Yeah, you're saying, yeah.
Through Paul Luna. And he called me. I was like, hey, I'm a bike. I called and I was like, hey, I'm a bike rider. I'm going to bring this stuff down. He saw it. He was like, hey, I'll give you some stuff. It was Don Brown that had the vision to be like, oh, let me not just blow this bike rider off,
Yeah.
And so he gave me some stuff, and then it just kind of started getting more and more. And then I got offered to ride for Duke's shoes.
Oh yeah, I remember them.
And Duke's was like a subsidiary. It was Jeremy Ray's sort of company, but it was a subsidiary of like Duff's maybe. But Jeremy was the head of Duke's, and I'll give you $300 a month to ride for Duke's. And so I went back, and at that point, I'm like, $300.
Yeah.
I went back to Etnies. I'm like, hey, they're going to offer me $300, which looking back now, how crazy is that? They would have just said no, go to Duke's, and Duke's would have been over, and Etnies would have never gotten into BMX at the same. Etnies, the history of BMX would have been different with Etnies.
Yeah.
They would have done it at some point, but it wouldn't have been that team. And so Don Brown was like, all right, we'll give you $300 a month. And so he started paying me. That was nice.
Just matched it straight away.
Just matched it. Yeah. And so sometime in there, I kept pushing. I was like, hey, we need to do a bike team. We need to do a bike team. We need to do a bike team. And so he finally said, yeah. He's like, put a dude together, 6 or 7 dudes or something like that. And also sometime around right before that, Griffin I think had gotten shoes from an Etnies rep. And so then he had called me, and then he started getting. I think I set it up so he could get stuff from Etnies official. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so he was sort of like he was definitely like the second dude who was getting stuff. I was getting paid, and then they're like, all right, let's put a team together. So in '95, that's when the first ESPN contest started.
Yeah.
And the first one was South Padre Island. So I went to South Padre Island, and I was going to ask everybody, and I may have this wrong a little bit, but I asked Joe Rich, Taj, Dave Friemuth, Brian Castillo I'd already asked. Griffin was on. Who else was on that early team?
Nate Hanson.
Nate Hanson. I don't know if he was that early or not. I can't remember. But
Sandy.
Could possibly be. What?
Sandy.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been that early. That would have come later.
Okay.
It was like 5 or 6 dudes. It was like Friemuth, Joe, Taj, Castillo, Griffin, and me, maybe. Maybe that was it.
Yeah.
There might have been someone else in that first one. I can't remember. But then later, more dudes came, And so we that was like the first fall. And so they started giving dudes shoes. And that's how it started. And I was sort of the team manager-ish, kind of. And then later turned into a terrible team manager. Yeah, that was how it started. That was it.
So it started in 95.
95.
Oh,
I
wow.
got sponsored in end of 93, and then we started the team in 95. So I've been on the team for like a year and a half or so.
So you was getting paid from 93. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
I was probably getting paid in 94 sometime.
Oh, okay.
End of 94.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that sort of took flight, didn't it? Etnies, it blew up. And remember, everyone was wearing the Mike V shoe.
Yeah.
Every BMX rider had a Mike V shoe for like a year or 2 years there.
I think because I had sort of grown up around skateboarders and seen how that worked and shoe companies worked and what they were getting paid and what they were doing. I think that is a direct result of the path Etnies took for BMX, because I would say no to a lot of, I wouldn't, for a while people are like, oh, Rooftop only does stuff for the money. There was that rumor going around, and I'm like, it's really weird that the people saying that are the people that I'm making money, that I'm fighting to make money. You know what I mean? Because originally they wanted to start paying dudes like $100 a month, and I fought real hard to make sure that everyone was like getting 2 pairs of shoes a month. And when people started getting paid, they started getting paid $300 a month, or whatever it was, right? Like a real salary. And when they would do like Christmas presents, we would do real Christmas presents. It wasn't like a cup that said Etnies on it,
Yeah.
Once I stopped being in charge, it kind of went back that way, because the BMXers have a tendency to just be happy with the least possible stuff. And it isn't that I wasn't happy. I just could see. I was like, well, I see the skaters are making. I knew this dude's making $1,500 a month, and his Christmas present was a flat screen TV. Why are you paying us $100 a month, and our Christmas present is a mug that says Etnies? You know what I mean? It wasn't about the money as much as it was about like, hey, we're you know what I mean? Like it'd be like going anywhere. Right?
Yeah.
Your friend gets 3 hamburgers and you get 1 bite.
Yeah.
You're doing the same job. You're like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And so, and they didn't push on it too hard, but I said, instead of shooting low, I just shot big right away. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is what it is. It's the same thing as you guys. Why would it be any different? And I think that's what started, you know what I mean? And I think Etnies doing that and their support in BMX at that time, I think made all the difference for the industry at that time.
Yeah, I know. It was amazing. Yeah. When they sort of got over the Mike V shoe, because everyone like loved that shoe and rode that forever. When they brought out the actual BMX shoes, like how did that go? Like getting that going, because that was a massive step back then, wasn't it? BMX
so
signature.
I'd helped design a shoe. They asked me to help design a shoe that was the BMX shoe, right?
Okay.
Had like a little heel pad on it and stuff. And we did that. I don't forget what it was called, but we did that. And they tried to market it as more of the BMX shoe. And then I just started pushing. I was like, hey, we need pro shoes. Like, let's do it. And it was the first BMX shoe pro shoes, you know? And so that took a bit of doing. And then it happened. You know what I mean? And then when the contracts came for that, I knew what like Jeremy was getting paid and I knew what dudes were getting paid. You know what I mean? And so I was like, this is what it's going to be. You know what I mean? Like, I think they came with an offer that was really, really good and pretty fair. And it was right about what I had asked. I want to say they were giving us like, at that first time, I may be wrong, but I remember being like $3 or $4 grand a month to like, it went from like I went making like $800 a month because it had gone up. You know what I mean? And everyone was making $800, maybe $1,200, $1,500, something to like $3 grand or $4 grand a month for the shoe.
Oh, wow.
Plus $2 a shoe after we sold, 50 grand worth.
Yeah.
Right. Once you made your minimum. The problem was is that at that point, they were really trying to expand BMX and support BMX. So they were only selling in BMX shops. And that was never going to happen. If they would have sold those shoes in skate shops, we all would have been making a couple $100 grand a year probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they did that. They supported it and they really went in. I mean, there's really no one that you can thank for that other than Don Brown and Pierre. Like Don Brown for making it happen and then Pierre for believing in Don Brown.
Yeah. No, that was a massive deal. I remember when they came out, they were really expensive over here and the shops couldn't keep them in. So
yeah, it was great.
Worked out well. Well, how did you get the idea for your, I think, was it the second shoe you made? It was like more like a running shoe almost.
No, that was the first shoe.
That was the first one.
The first shoe looked more like a running shoe than.
Okay.
Well, I knew what the other guys were going to do, and I also could see that being in Southern California, I think I could see the trends a little bit.
Yeah.
Stuff and what I wanted to wear, and I wanted a shoe that looked cool, not just like the same old skate shoe, Yeah. And I think a lot of the stuff that I did suffered because of that, but also like it was what became normal a few years later. You know what I mean? Like I think some of the stuff that I wanted to do, bike riders weren't quite there yet. Although my shoe did sell 2 to 1 to those other guys.
That's what I heard. It was the best-selling one. Yeah,
it sold 2 to 1.
Yeah,
and I think it's because like in certain parts of the world, we were just trends move. Especially trends, especially at that time in Southern California, trends were coming out of here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
so it just took time. So the dudes who were here were buying it, and I think back then it was hard. I think not to be a Rooftop fan if you were a kid because Mark Losey and Brad McDonald were putting me in every issue of the magazine. Like I'm literally being crammed down everyone's throat, and I was so young that I think young kids maybe like that. You know what I mean? They saw someone that didn't look like an old man. Like a 25-year-old.
Yeah. And
so I understand why it did so well because those dudes there was one issue in BMX Plus that I had 17 photos in one issue. And there was times when I would have 100 photos a year between all rides and BMX Pluses and UK rides. It'd be over 100 photos a year. It was crazy.
Were you getting contingency for them photos?
No. I mean, I'm sure I did here and there, but I never got really I'm sure I did, but never enough for it to be it was $25 or something,
Yeah. Okay. And then it ran for a couple of years, didn't it? 3 years or something.
The what? The shoes?
Yeah, the Joe, Taj, and Rooftop shoe.
That went. I mean, we did
Yeah,
3 of those. We had 3 of those shoes.
Okay.
So it went more than 3 years. We had a Rooftop 2. I mean, 3. And the weird thing about the Rooftop 2 is there was a Enns. I came in. I kept bruising my heels. Remember, everything. A big deal was like having air, like an air pocket in your shoe. I kept bruising my heels, so I cut apart one of my shoes, and I realized that the air pocket is shaped like a donut, and your heel would go through the donut. And so I came up with this idea to put gel on the inside. And so I brought that to Enns, and this is the craziest thing. I brought it to Enns, and then in that time they had a shift of who was designing shoes and a part of, and they came up in that time. They came with the Enns Lab O2 system, and it was an air with gel in the middle. Okay. So a couple months later, when I was ready to get my sample shoe, the new guy at the lab was like, "Hey, check out this thing we're doing, this gel air thing." And I was like, "This is my drawing, mother effers." And so they didn't put it in my second shoe. They put it in an inline shoe, which just means like a shoe that is going to skate, you know? And so that technology that I'd come up with went into skate shoes and not into my bikes. I was so pissed. And they built like a lab with like millions of dollar lab that they'd started because of the idea of like, hey, this isn't working, you know? And so they built this whole lab to test shoes. It was pretty rad. But it was all like building blocks of this G2. That's what they called it. They called it G2, gel 2. And so, but it didn't go in my second shoe because they wanted it to go in a skate shoe. So we did that shoe, and then the third shoe, and then sometime in there they gave Ruben a shoe.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That was maybe on the third run.
Yeah.
So some of the shoes were like, I mean, if you look at them now, they're huge, but like back then, it was perfect for what
they're normal. I mean, everyone says like land of like when people talk about the time of big shoes. I never really thought any of our shoes were that big. Like there were other shoes by like DVS or whatever, that were like huge globe. Like I mean, like my first shoe is definitely not that big. My second shoe is a little bulkier, and my third shoe is not any bigger than a shoe now.
I can't even remember the third.
It just had a 3 on it. It was just like, it was a super simple shoe.
Okay.
It was my least favorite one.
Yeah.
But the shoes weren't as people. Every time I post an old photo, people will always glamorize that bikes were 50 pounds and shoes were, milk cartons on your feet. You know what I mean? But like it wasn't. Bikes were heavy. There were people who had 40-pound bikes. They were probably 35 to 40, but people make it sound like weird. You know what I mean? Like it was way worse than it was.
Yeah. What was the demise of that kind of that time of Enns? Like, how comes they just stopped? They carried on doing shoes, but it wasn't nowhere near to the scale that
I may have this timeline a little off because it was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But there was a time when shoes started going into the mall, into a store called PacSun. And PacSun was buying a ton of shoes. And then at some point, PacSun stopped buying shoes, period. And I think that was a big hit for the skate industry and Enns and things. I think this is it. And so at that point, I think that was it was a huge, all of a sudden they had this account and they bought all this stuff and the accounts weren't buying because they had just stopped buying shoes. And that was and I remember there was I knew they were going to have to cut the BMX program, right? They were going to have to cut it. And so I look at it 2 different ways. Like I look at it the business way and then the probably an honest way. So they're both true, but one, it was only ever going to be me that got cut in 2007. One, because I made more than everybody and they could cut me instead of cutting like 5 dudes. And it makes it look like nothing's really happened. Right? That's one. If you look at it business wise, I understand that. At the other time, the Texas crew was such a clique, at that time, and I did not fit in that clique. And I think the guys who all lived in Texas, that sort of, like Joe's and Sandy's and Stricker, all those people, I definitely did not fit into the team as Enns, you know what I mean? Like, and for many reasons. One, because I didn't want to play by their rules, and 2, because I just, some people just don't fit together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think Povah had to make a decision. I think it was influenced a lot by that. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Because he was getting heat from everybody else, like, just get rid of Rooftop, because everyone had a problem with me then, you know? And a lot of reasons they had problems with me was if it was today, in today's industry, no one would have a problem with me. They had a problem because at that point I'd started going on surf trips and snowboard trips with all the other brands that I rode for, because I rode for Hurley and Nixon and all these other brands that did other stuff. And that was a real if you did anything besides BMX, it was a real problem back then. Now you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who isn't really good at another sport, you know? And that was a big starter in the problem. And then, you know, and plus I never really played by anybody's rules, you know what I mean? Like, BMXers were so hardcore. It's hard for, I think, bike riders to understand this now, but bike riding was so hardcore that you could get, like, having the wrong having 4-piece bars was like a sin-worthy trespass. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, you could get obliterated by, you know, whoever had the biggest mouth to talk about it, you know?
Yeah.
Because of your bike setup. And I hadn't changed my bike setup since 1995 because I just didn't really follow trends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not because I was some trendsetter, but just because I was like, whatever, what I'm riding, that's what I like. And so it was an easy choice, I think, to let me go for many reasons.
But how long did that last then? Till 2007?
2007 is when I let go, but I don't know when exactly they stopped doing shoes. They could have stopped doing shoes slightly before that.
Yeah, I think quite a bit before that, yeah. But
I think the run was about 3 to 5 years with the shoes.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, yeah. They definitely went.
But then they had a Rubin shoe that went for a while, and then at some point, years later, they started doing colorways for people, which I don't even know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that was much later on.
Which to me isn't the same thing, you know?
No, it wasn't. But yeah, that was a good. And they made them videos as well, which were pretty fucking.
Yeah, they did Forward and what was the other one?
Grounded, was it?
Grounded, that's right. Yeah. Grounded, I didn't film anything for. At that point, I was like, I didn't want to go on any trips with the guys because we got an email from whoever was making the video, filming stuff, whatever was doing about all the places we went. And I remember I sent an email back going like, why are we going to all the places that Road Fools just went to? Yeah, like, I don't want to go to these places. I don't want to go to all these. I don't want to ride all because like if you notice something, if you look at any video parts of mine or any photos, I never really rode famous spots, right? Like you'd never catch me doing something down on El Toro. Out of your goddamn mind. To me, that was like, and I say this with all the respect because I don't. For me personally, filming stuff on those famous spots was like an admittance that I wasn't good enough bike rider to go do my own stuff. Like I wanted to be the guy who made spots famous, not outdid people at their own spots. Yeah, I never understood why people wanted to do stuff down other spots like that. If you really look at all my spots, they were not a lot that are like famous spots before that. Because I didn't. Once it was done, it was done. That spot was. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, how we had this conversation with a couple of friends recently. How long does it take until that spot is usable again?
For me, but usable again.
Yeah, like so it's, you know, someone's filmed something on it. How long do you have to wait until it's acceptable to use it again?
Today, no, they could go an hour later.
No, I mean, if you're filming for like a DVD, you know, if I'm filming a trick on it and I'm going to go film it for the next or anyone, yeah, like what is it, 10 years? I mean,
for me, never, unless you're going to ride the spot in a different way.
Yeah,
right. But if like let's just use El Toro. Let's say it's the El Toro rail. Someone ice picked it, and I'm going to go ice pick the bar spin it. Yeah, suck it. I'll just go find another rail. I'll go find a bigger rail. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or a comparable one. Like, why would you, or one that looked cooler or had another obstacle that made it, you know, like back then I used to really try to find stuff that looked cool, right? Like there was plenty of times when there'd be rails and maybe we did one a little bit smaller or a little bit different because it looked better. You know what I mean? Or there was a bigger consequence or, you know, or no one had ever seen it before. The idea now, because now it's just like, somebody could make a curb famous and you'll see like dudes go ride. They'll fly all over town. I remember I was in San Francisco once. We hooked up with all the locals and we pedaled for a goddamn millennia over all these hills to San Francisco to go ride a 3-stair. And I'm like, bitches, we passed 23 stairs on the way here, but it was a famous 3-stair. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't understand it. You know what I mean? I don't understand it.
So what about if someone went to a rail and ice picked it, and then someone went to a rail and manualed it?
I mean, to me, go find a different rail.
Okay,
Especially if the rail's like a rail in a part, because you could do a rail in a part and it kind of goes by, and then you could do a rail that becomes a famous rail, right? Yeah. Go find a different rail. Like to me, going to do it on that same rail is just like you're chasing some sort of clout, but it's someone else's.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, go find your. Like, I've always been an advocate for finding your own spots, and especially nowadays, that sort of have this gotten lost because we live in an era right now, and it's hard to. I don't want to talk negative about it because these guys are better bike riders than I ever will be or ever could be. And the stuff they're doing is super hard, but we're living in an era of BMX where everything's a spot and nothing is ugly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what I'm going to tell you right now is some of that shit is fucking ugly, guys.
Yeah, a lot.
You know what I mean? It doesn't matter how hard it is. And you know what? Everything is not a spot. Just because you can do a trick on it doesn't mean we need to see it. You know, like, have a little bit of respect for your craft and for the work that the company's putting in and all the filmmakers and all the other people on your team are putting in to make the video good. Go look around, drive around this motherfucker and find some cool shit. You know, like, that's the way I saw it, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's the whole reason people started riding bikes is because they thought it looked good, I think. So,
yeah. Like, there's some stuff that is just, and it's like I said, I understand this stuff's really hard, and I get that bike riding goes through trends, and what I think is cool might not be what's cool now, but I can really appreciate how hard it is. You know what I mean? But we've entered this, and also we've entered an area of street, like, bike riding is so sectional now. Like, you got the guys who ride contests who are doing something that I don't even know if I consider BMX. You know what I mean? It's incredible, but it's nothing that I relate to. Then you have street dudes who are doing, like, real big gnarly street shit, and then you have urban, and then you have, like, obstacle course flatland is what I've been calling it, because that's what's going on for the other half of.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know, like, if I see someone pop into, like, a backwards spinning manual over something, I instantly don't care about the clip. You know what I mean? And it's not that I don't think it's hard. It's just like I just know what I'm looking at. Like, it is no different. If I saw flatland, I do the same thing because I'm not interested in it. I can appreciate if I'm watching it live, and I can appreciate my friends working hard on it. But I don't want to spend. I mean, you can't. I don't think I've, like, if a video comes up as a flatland part, I'm going to fast forward it. It's not because I can't respect they're doing. I don't want to spend 40 minutes watching flatland.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The same way I don't want to spend 40 minutes watching tennis.
Yeah. But it's like I was listening to someone on, I think it was Maurice Meyer maybe, and he was comparing something to, you don't need to see someone do 150 backups.
No, you don't. You know?
Once someone's got to about 50, you can realise that you can just keep going. You don't need all day. You can move on. You know.
When I see 15 nose manuals or 5 nose manuals in one BMX section, I'm like, I got it, guys. You just wasted of the 30 clips you're going to put in your video part. 5 of them were the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes some of the ledges, and I get people ride these small ledges, and I'm not even dissing that, but so I got stuffed up. But it's like, what I don't understand is the mentality that you've just seen 20 other videos in the same spot on this ledge that's under your knee. And I get when you learn stuff on that stuff, but once you learn it, when you want to film something for real, why aren't you going to do it on something legit? That's what I'm understanding. And I know it's just like and like I said, I'm not trying to speak negatively of it, but I just don't understand the mindset of wanting to do the same thing the last guy did, and then wondering why you're not the guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because the guys, you know who they are, and you know when you watch their video parts, you're like, what is going on? And it's because of that. I mean, and even like some things are getting so complicated now. Corey Martinez, by the time this is out, it'd been a couple weeks ago, but he just put up a clip of him doing a backwards grind on like a pretty small ledge, but he's hauling ass and it's long. It's awesome. And it's so simple. And he does a backwards grind for like 40 feet on like a flat ledge, going fast. And it is so awesome and so classic. I could watch that all day. I'd much rather see that than like backwards grind, hop around to manual, fish out of water. You know what I mean? Hop up to ice pick to onto the tires to dead stop bar spin to dead stop. You know, it's like sometimes unless you can figure out how to make those tricks look cool, sometimes I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice to your overall presentation of your video part.
Yeah. Well, you know? going fast is the dangerous bit of being on a bike as well. So
yeah, or at this point you have to at least be moving.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff I see people land to a dead stop. Like there was plenty of things that I feel like I landed to a dead stop. We're like, we can't use it.
Yeah.
Can't use it because it's just or find a way to trick it. Have the camera move. Have the camera move past you so it looks like you do something because it really is terrible looking in a video part.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things I find. Like you're on a bike, you should be moving.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah, the other weird thing that we've gotten into is bikes has become trial riding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like people used to like if Dennis McCoy hopped up that did some bunch of hoppy stuff back in the early 90s, he'd get crucified for it.
Yeah.
Now, like I just saw a clip BMX posted the other day. Like what he did was hard, but it was like he hopped up to sprocket, then the tire tap, then a foofing on a rail, then back to double wheels, and then and you're like, yeah, that's cool. It's just a different sport.
Yeah.
Like you're a trials rider.
I saw someone land, like I don't know what it was, but he landed like in a foot jam nose pick and then like hopped like 15 feet round in a circle and then went back. And I had the same feeling. I was like, that wasn't it.
You're like, yeah, like I get it. What you're doing was crazy. You did a flare to nose pick. But then
insane.
You did 20 hops to get back in. Where I'm like, at that point, maybe figure out a different way to do it, or just decide that some things just should. You know what I mean? Some things just shouldn't be seen.
It just reminded me of the 80s, but like, it's amazing. But like,
we do live in a time in BMX where nothing sucks. You know what I mean? According to the lack of media we have anyways, but nothing sucks, which if nothing sucks, then nothing's cool either. You know what I mean? And so that's how I've always seen it, you know, and sometimes you got to make hard car. There was even like a trick I remember I filmed for Nowhere Fast, maybe. I don't know what it was because I think I had clips of Nowhere Fast. I have a video part.
Yeah, you did. You got part in Nowhere Fast.
Yeah, but I didn't film a part. Dave just had footage of me riding because I just had Dirty Deeds. He's like, you're not going to be in this video. So it was just footage that I had. He would film me while everyone else was warming up type thing. But I remember like for a while, a trick was like on a street spline, foofanu, ice pick, tail tap, fakie, over. And I remember I filmed that and I was like, we can never use that. That is the stupidest looking thing ever. But then, you know, like trends change and all of a sudden that's like a real trick people are doing, you know, in contests. And I wasn't the first person to do it. I just remember like it was in the time when that started happening. I was like, that shit sucks. And so you don't put it in, you know, because and sometimes you win, like even like, so like, you know, like hard way to backwards grinds.
Yeah.
So I started doing that for before we were trying to get it for forward. And so I have a bunch of footage of me doing it at Van Skate Park. And I would land Smith all the time, but I would land and it would like dead stop. And then I did one at a Virginia Beach contest that Chris Rye filmed for props. And I did one like hard way 180 to backwards to hop up, but I like land dead stop and then kind of roll down the wedge. You know what I mean? And I remember I asked him, please don't put that in because I was trying to master it. And I called it a super race. I called it a spick slide. It was like, I finally get the name something, a spick slide, because it was like a Mexican grind. And so I kind of lost interest after that. And then dudes started doing like real version. Ones start doing are ones that I would have never been capable of doing, you know? And it looks good now, but when I did it, it just wasn't ready. Bike riding wasn't there. My skills weren't there. The idea of how to use it wasn't there. And so it just needed to stay in the box, you know? So when it came out, it was impressive instead of just it comes out and it looks like garbage.
So they didn't use it in the video?
No, I asked them not to. Because it wasn't, you know what I mean? Like it
wasn't finished,
I mean, it was something no one was doing, but who cares if it
still needed work?
Yeah, it needed work, and I lost interest in it, so I never got back to it. And when people finally did it with a way bigger skill set than I ever had, it looked right. It was like it was what that trick was meant to do. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I was going to ask you about the Nowhere Fast part because I watched it the other day and I was like, oh wow, it's mostly ramps.
So in Dirty Deeds, which at some point everyone will get to see, we're working on it. Hopefully, if we get back working on this. I have enough footage in Dirty Deeds of ramp stuff that could make an entire section. But Dave made the choice to make it 90% street. Thank God.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that was such a big part.
Thank God, right? Yeah. And my part would have been 8 minutes long or something. No one did that back then. So now we probably would have put all of it in there. But by that time, I went through phases where I hated street and I was just riding ramps. I don't even know what my part is in North Pass. I remember I did some skids at the Civic Center and I remember like the San Pedro Bank Defense School. But I probably was just having a second time when I was riding more ramps. Maybe my wrists were hurt or something because I know I would wrists and ankles be hurt from street riding, and so I would ride ramps more.
Yeah,
it
was definitely. When I watched it, I was like, "Oh, it's totally different," because it came quite soon after.
Yeah, and it was because I wasn't filming for a video part.
Yeah,
it was just like I was riding while everyone else was filming. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there was never like I'm going for this. You know what I mean? Like it was just sort of the stuff I did. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You can see that when you look at it now. If someone that didn't know you went and had a look at that, both them parts, they'd be like, "Oh, this one's so different."
Totally different. Yeah. And then even Until Monkeys Fly came out after that too, I think.
Okay.
And even Until Monkeys Fly, I filmed 2 days for.
Was that was before, I think, wasn't it?
It might have been before, I don't know, but Matt was like, "Hey, Mark Eaton's coming out to film me for a video part." And my experience with video parts at that point was like, we're filming for 6 months, a year.
Yeah.
And Matt's like, he's coming out to film for the weekend. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so that day, all that stuff is filmed in one day. And then there's a kink rail I do. It's raining out when it does it. And that was filmed the next day because it rained. Sunday it rained, so we couldn't film. And I was so embarrassed that people think I filmed the whole thing, like didn't want to film, that I changed my shirt in that video. Every spot we went, so it didn't look like I filmed it in one day.
Wow!
And the first backwards rail you saw in a video. There have been rumors that other people had done it. Ian had been doing it, like he'd been attempting to do it. I don't know if he pulled one. I'm sure he had, but he did like man-size rails, like real rails that I had no business being around. Went doing backwards, but in that one. I do it in a line. Like I do a whole line down to Civic Center. I 180 stairs, turn around, and then go right into 180 handrail, and then flip around, and then grind a bigger rail. But it was the first one that was like in a video, I think, that you saw pulled.
So was that 95 or 96?
Could have been.
Yeah, it must, because Road Falls was 97, so that must have been.
It was before Road Falls. It was when Joe started doing big ones.
Yeah, so it might be 96 or 97.
And that Joe one, Cat's Out of the Bag, I believe that wasn't actually on that trip. They filmed it later.
Oh, really?
I mean, I could be wrong. I think it's 30 years ago, 20-some, I don't know how long ago. 25 years ago, I think that there's stuff, that backwards rail they'd filmed in Austin after the fact and put it in the video.
Oh, okay.
Not that it matters, but
there
was another gap of time, you know?
Yeah, still badass, yeah.
Insane. I remember when I saw that, I was like, well, I'm out of that race. that race is kind of gone.
And what about you started coming to the UK? When was that? Like,
my first trip to the UK was 1995.
Oh, really?
For the backyard jam in '95.
That was the one in the field.
That was the one in the field with the jump over the water.
Okay, yeah.
Over the chasm, and I rode vert.
Yeah, that's right. You rode vert.
Yeah, I mean, I rode a vert ramp. I wouldn't say I rode vert, but I actually I do 540s, but they end up one of them I did, and I fell down on, but came pretty close. The 540 looks closer to what people call flares now.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah,
they were all just I didn't know what I was doing.
But you did some 540s that day, I think.
Right? I did do a 540, but in the process of trying to get one,
okay,
more kind of corked out. Whatever.
Yeah, and then so you came to 96 as well.
Is that the one with the double doubles?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chad Harrington came to that one too.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to that one too. Yeah.
And then,
but then I started going to like the what was that other games that was there? The Urban Games.
Urban Games. That was Urban Games.
And
we remember filming for that, was it Thunder, the Ride US video, and you had like street stuff in London with Jimmy Levan.
Oh, that's when I almost fell off the edge of that thing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy, like in the video, Jimmy tries to bunny up on that huge ledge and he rides down it.
Yeah.
Right before that, I attempted it and my hip back wheel like landed feeble, and I run to the edge, and I was going to jump like 10 feet down to the top of a phone booth because I almost fell off. Yeah, but Jimmy, I didn't get on it or couldn't get on it, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And Jimmy ended up doing. Yeah, there was because we also do that handrail next to each other. I don't. It's hard to remember all that stuff. I only remember that because I saw it a couple years ago, and I was like, "What is this?"
That was quite a famous skate spot. It's gone now, but
that bank, they're going down the stairs, the side of the stairs. Because we did a handrail and then we jumped like down.
The handrails have gone, and the ledges have gone, and that whole square's gone with the benches in. I'm not sure if the wall's still there. I think the wall might have gone as well, but I can't.
I mean, all those early years, it's hard to remember exactly what. I mean, at that point, I was coming to England like 3 times a year. Okay. 2 or 3 times a year because of 70s. We were doing tours and skate park tours, and then the backyard jam started like being at skate parks. You know, they built those things, and so I was coming a lot.
So you came every year for like 20 years or something?
I have 36 trips to England, and I would say like probably 30 of them are between 95 and like 2005, 2008, or probably 2008.
Yeah.
2000, or maybe 2010. And then I come, every couple of years after that.
Yeah, from 95 upwards was like boom period, really, wasn't it? So,
yeah.
So what about that company Exhibit that you started?
Well, we started a company with Exhibit with Matt, and we had some designs, and I wanted to like try to make it cooler. And then when I wasn't looking, they ordered stuff. I was like, we need to get samples, and they just ordered a ton of like colorful jeans, green jeans, and all this Oklahoma shit that no one would wear. And I think the company died before it even started because it just got off to a bad start. I was like, we ordered a bunch of shit that I would never wear.
Yeah.
And so it had a couple shirts, a couple cut and sew shirts, and some other stuff that was all right, but it kind of came and went pretty quick.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because it seemed like it was going to be something.
Yeah, and then they ordered a bunch of clothes that no one. They ordered a bunch of colors I've never ordered red or green jeans, especially then. And they were also, the jeans weren't pre-shrunk and they were real baggy, and so I was like, well, this is stuff I wouldn't even wear. And so I think that sort of came and went real quick.
Oh, okay. I remember the cargo pants were like thick, like felt almost.
Yeah, they're too. Yeah, it's stuff that like I just think at that point everyone who was in charge was like, or like everybody at Hoffman Bikes that was like part of it. You know what I mean? Like, and there was a couple other guys. It wasn't Matt. It was these other guys. We just didn't know what we were doing. You know what I mean? Like, oh, cargo pants, cool.
Yeah.
You know, and we ordered. It would be good.
What was the vision for that? Like,
well, I just wanted to make clothes that like mirrored the stuff that like Southern California companies were making. You know what I mean? Skate companies were making. You know what I mean? I wanted to make jeans that were cool and baggy pants, like bands that were like weren't thick. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like shirts that look cool. Like I've never been like, I feel like BMX was stuck in this era of cartoon characters too. And so that's what was the thing, but then it never happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
It happened, but it didn't, I think it got started off in such debt because we couldn't sell any of the stuff that it kind of had to die.
Okay. What was that? Last about a year or something?
I have no idea. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I don't know.
What was the story of the BMX Jihad?
Oh, there was an Enns ad. I actually put that clip up not that long ago, and we'd ridden that. There was riding that Blackpool, but at that time there was like there was a lot of hate between bikes and skaters, right?
Yeah.
And it was Phelps.
Yeah.
What was his first name? Jake Phelps.
Yeah.
I think there was an incident at Chaffee High where the ledges were all chipped, and they were blaming it all on bike riders because of the pegs, you know. And rightfully, probably some of it was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And at some point, he had written an article. He used a photo of someone and wrote an article and things and called us BMX Jihads in the article. And so that ad, I had an Enns ad, and I did it with Enns because Enns is a skate company. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just was like, I put a little thing, hey, thanks for cleaning the pool out. BMX Jihad approved. And so it was sort of a jab at them, you know what I mean? Because like, they can suck it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I grew up, I had such a different experience with skateboarders because I grew up, I always felt like I was part of the skate industry. Like as far as being, because all my buddies were, and I was doing stuff with all the brands I rode for, Hurley, Nixon, Etnies, they were all skate brands. You know what I mean? And I had videos. I had like clips in Debbie Does Blockhead. I had clips in like 411 Barracks stuff back before the Barracks was the Barracks. I had clips in Secondhand Smoke, the Plan P video. You know what I mean? So I was friends with these guys, like because of these. You know what I mean? I would go places, I'd see all the other skaters. You know what I mean? And so to me, I didn't understand it. You know, and it was just like a certain other group that was just pissed. You know what I mean? Especially like skate parks back then. Like they really had a problem with us riding skate parks. And like, you know what I mean? And I was like, look, when you can get to the coping, you can complain about us grinding it. You know?
I thought it was about pools. Yeah, I didn't realize it was about a street spot.
No, it was about everything. It was about everything. Yeah, because you know, like there's always these things, like you know, like I've always had a disposition to be like, I don't care about if skaters like it or not. You know what I mean? Like there was always this drama, like don't like even in road pools, I think someone said like respect the pool. Don't put your pegs in the coping. I'm like, that is what it's for.
Yeah.
That's what the coping's for, to grind it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like now that doesn't mean do a 4-foot air to ice pick, because that ruins it for bike riding too. You know what I mean? But I can ride a pool all day long, every day. I bet you I haven't chipped pool coping in 10 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's things you can do and not do. It isn't even about respect. It's just common sense. And so when people, or when skaters, I would get kicked out of places, you know, like because skaters were pissed, I had zero care about it. Like I did all those Tony Hawk tours later on where like we go to places and bikers were not happy. Like I remember when to FDR. At that point, early 2000s, like they did not want bikers at FDR.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I just went and flipped something. I went and flipped some transfer or whatever it was. And then everyone shut up, and it was cool. You know what I mean? And that makes it even worse to me. If you're gonna be a dick, at least have balls and be a dick.
Be a dick to everyone. I mean?
And like I remember we were in Hawaii and someone was yelling, and then Colin Winkleman foo-fooed like a 6 or 7 foot fence out of something. It kind of looked like the one that Morgan just did when out of a skate park not that long ago. But it was a big, like 6 foot tall fence out of a 6 or 7 foot tall. And Colin foo-fooed it. Then everyone at the park shut up. So that to me, I let's lose respect for it. If you're going to kick us out, have some balls and kick us out. Don't kick us out because we're good. You know what I mean? Just because, you know, it's just, so I never had that, like, if they're like bikes aren't allowed, I'm like, yeah, I don't care. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, or I would just look at it like the same way I saw no trespassing signs. Those signs were for someone else. You know what I mean? When I saw no bikes, I was like, are those you yelling bike? I'm like, oh, they're talking about the other bike riders. That has nothing to do with me. That's just how I saw it. You know, that's just how I saw it. And then, you know what I mean? And then it usually was fine.
Yeah. Well, and what was it? How well do you know Tony Hawk?
I would say, especially from 2000 to even a few years ago, I've moved out. I mean, we don't do as many stuff together anymore, but he's one of my closest friends. I would put him in my top 5 closest friends. Oh, wow. Even now, like I put him in one of my closest friends. You know, the same way I put Jason Enns or Paul Luna or these guys that I've traveled the world with and been in so many situations for 2 decades. Like, how do you not put someone, you know what I mean, in that category? But yeah he's one of my. I would say for a long time he was one of my closest friends. Oh
wow! I've been watching that podcast that he does with Ellis. So quite enjoying.
You like it?
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, he's gone. He
has some great stories, and Tony's a good storyteller. And he the way he processes things that happen to him and finds what's funny about it is really good.
I like that. For a while they were going on about like how they were older, and it was like the certain barriers they had to push through to skate the vert ramp. It was cool. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. So what was that like? That what was it? The Huck Jam was that called?
I wasn't on the Huck Jam. The Huck Jam was the big arena tour where they had like motorcycle tour. I was part of the Tony Hawk tours that were an ESPN thing when we went around to actual skate parks and did huge demos, and then the Tony Hawk secret tour. Secret skate park tour, which was the same thing. We just didn't announce it. We would show up, there'd be no one at the park, and then within 2 hours there'd be 2,000 people there.
Was you the only bike rider on that? Or
on the ESPN tours, I think Rick Thorne did a few, and I think Matt Hoffman did a few.
Okay.
On the secret tours, I'm pretty sure I was the only bike rider on all the tours.
How was that? Who was the other skateboarders?
I mean, there was tons. Like there was, they came and go. There was, Andy McDonald, Mike Vallely, Kris Markovich, Willie Santos, Tony Hawk, Jason Ellis, Steve Barra, Chalmers, a bunch of the young kids, Bucky Lasek. I mean, it was just all the heavy hitters of skating.
Self-studied, yeah.
Yeah, because they were doing those big vert demos and street demos, and I was the one bike rider, which to Tony Hawk's, because I know people for a while was like, oh, Tony Hawk makes skate parks and he doesn't let bike riders in there, which has nothing to do with Tony Hawk. That is a per city thing. Tony has actually a whole pamphlet that's available why bikes are fine. You know what I mean? What is the real problem is the skate park, the dudes who make the skate parks. And there was a time when skate park dudes who built the skate parks would insure the parks to the city if bikes weren't allowed.
Yeah, I remember these stories.
Things like that, right? And convince them Tony, if you look at Tony put bike riders on all his tours, and whether you want to agree with it or not, it put bikes in front of a lot more eyes. You know what I mean? He put a lot of money in a lot of bike riders' pockets on all those Huck Jam stuff. He's an advocate for it, man.
Well, and he lets people ride the vert ramp as well. So
yeah. He's there's no him. He's just I have zero bad things to say about Tony from the time I barely knew him to the time I know him really well. Zero negative things to say about the way he treats other people.
He comes across pretty well, to be honest. Well, actually, the one thing that he didn't come across very well with was, remember he had bikes one year.
Yeah.
What was that all about?
So I was a part of that.
That's what I heard, yeah.
Yeah, so it was in between. I think it was after Redline, right? I think it was after Redline. And Tony got a deal to do because it wasn't Tony. Here's the problem: is it wasn't Tony Hawk bikes. It was Huck Jam bikes, which is no different than saying Nitro Circus bikes.
Yeah,
because that's what Nitro Circus is. It's just a different Huck Jam, right? That's all it is. The Huck Jam was just vert ramp and moto jumps, and Nitro is just the moto jump, right? They simplified it and found out what worked. You know what I mean? And made it cost effective. So to me, Tony Hawk bike or Huck Jam bikes is no different than Nitro Circus bikes. And no one seems to have a problem if Nitro Circus has scooters or bikes.
Yeah.
Right? And those are motocross guys. You know what I mean? Yeah. So what it was Huck Jam. They licensed Huck Jam out. The Huck Jam to make pads and things like that. They licensed the Huck Jam series, right? And so one of these bike guys licensed Huck Jam to make little kids' bikes. To me, it makes sense. There's half of the people on the Huck Jam are bike riders.
Yeah.
Right? So I didn't see Huck Jam as a skate thing. I just saw it as action sports. It was, because it was motorcycles, bikes, and skateboards.
Yeah.
But Tony Hawk's name, it's Tony Hawk's Huck Jam bikes. Okay. You know what I mean? No different than if you made Mick Jagger's something microphones. You know what I mean? It didn't have to be for rock and roll. It could be for anything, but Mick Jagger was the name that was going to sell it. Right?
Yeah.
So those bikes are actually Tony Hawk's Huck Jam bikes. And so Tony asked me if I would help with the bikes. Because he's like, I don't know anything about bikes. You know what I mean? And so it was licensed to a company that puts about 10 million bikes out a year. And they do the bikes when you see them in the Target, Next and a bunch of other bikes. And so they're all bikes and they own a 2 million square foot at the time, 2 million square foot factory in China. And they make everything down to the valve stem caps.
Wow.
So they have a book of everything you pick and choose the bike, right? Yeah. And so what I did is I thought, well, these are going to be $100 bikes. And let's try to make a bike. Because here's the problem with bike riding. Bike riding and the industry has convinced itself, and it's the only industry that does this, that only bike riders who are hardcore bike riders should buy BMX bikes. And every bike that is made should be geared for that. You know what I mean? A $500 bike it can't be any less quality. The problem is you have customers at every bike, at every price range. And you want kids to be able to get into bikes, right? So what I thought was, okay, how can I make these Huck Jam bikes as cool as looking? So we worked on the graphics to make them cool. There was a lot of models, so that was a hard one because we had to make so many. But I went and I looked at the catalog. We could change some stuff, and I dropped almost 10 pounds off every bike, basing it on making like small flange hubs and stems that were smaller, bars that looked closer, not just weird looking bars, seats that looked closer. Change the, cut out stuff. So we made, what I want to do is make those bikes lighter so that young kids who were like 8 and 9 years old, 10 years old, and only had $100 to spend on a bike, had a bike that looked closer to the bikes that we rode. And we did, I think, a fantastic job. And so that I was at the point in my career, I was like, let me try to help kids get into BMX, because Dave Miron didn't do it, and he's the one who should have. Yeah. Miracle should have been a low-end bike company because he had the name to get kids into bike riding. You know what I mean? And I thought, okay, well, let's use Tony Hawk's name and Huck Jam to get kids into bikes. Like, what could be wrong with that? Because no one in bike riding is stepping up, because bike riding has told everyone that you can only sell hardcore bikes to hardcore kids that have to be the best quality. Doesn't matter if there's 5 million kids who are only can afford a $100 bike. This is a bike that they learn how to ride bikes on. They leave it on the lawn. It gets stolen, and no one cares. But maybe 1 or 2 of each 100 kids saw that bike, thought it was cool, started getting into bikes, and then got a bike that looked like the bike that they started riding on. And that was the point. But the problem is you have people in bike riding who couldn't see anything past that. You know what I mean? And they you know what I mean? And it was just for big box stores. And then stupidly, that company got a booth at Interbike, which they shouldn't have done that, because those bikes weren't even meant to be sold at IBDs, independent bike dealers. It was just meant for big box stores. And they were just doing that more, I think, as like hey, we're here. You know what I mean? We make bikes. But the problem is bike industry, like, I wanted to, with that bike brand, that bike, the guys who licensed it, what I want to do afterwards, I really wanted to see if I could get 5 brands in BMX, like, let's say Volume and Sunday and whoever else would be into it. I wanted to see if they could sign a licensing deal with this company, and he'd say, all right, well, 100,000 bikes a year are these low-end bikes, and you're going to make $10 a bike. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we could funnel that into BMX, because how else? For some reason in BMX, we think that bike riding can be funded only through bike riders. Skateboarding can't be funded only through skateboarders, and it's way bigger. Yeah. You know what I mean? You didn't have kids going into skate shop, every teen kid in America buying a skateboard or buying shoes or buying clothes. You couldn't keep skateboarding alive. But we're trying to keep bike riding alive with only money from bike riders. So I thought if we could get just the kid who, if you can get, like, let's just use Volume. If you can get bikes that look cool like a Volume and had cool end caps at Target or whatever, and these kids are buying these $100 bikes, maybe, like I said, 1 kid out of 100 or 2 kids out of whatever it is, out of 500 would get into bikes and then go buy a real Volume, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you couldn't do it because no one wants to share the burden. No one wants to have the burden of saying I do a low end bike. When the problem with bike riding is that we don't do low end bikes, is that we let people who have nothing to do with bike riding sell 10 million bikes in big box stores every year.
Yeah. I think the problem with that is the older guys who are really passionate about riding BMX, they don't want to be associated with a bike that's $100. But I can see where that comes in. But you need to just change the name of the company and if you Volume, you did change it to something else,
Yeah, change it to slightly, something different, like, or you know what I mean, saying something, or even if you don't, you make it like a subsidiary of the brand, like Volume, you know what I mean, Volume Rascals or something, you know what I mean? But you can't tell me right now, you can't tell me that if we did that with 5 brands and they sold 100,000 bikes a year at $10 a bike, and they're making $1 million off $1 million per company, $5 million is getting funneled into BMX. And let's say at the time, let's find who's a bike rider back then that might have done that. Let's just use Joe Rich, because he was, as hardcore as you come. If someone would have done that, Terrible One could have said, "Hey, we're going to send these Terrible Ones. They're going to be made for little kids. They're supposed to break. That's the deal. We're going to give you $1 million, and you for your bike, you're going to get $200,000 a year, and you're going to have a life." You know what I mean? Like, not one person should say no to that.
Yeah,
it's only helping, and plus the brand is going to get $1 million to put back into hardcore bike riding. You know what I mean? Trips.
Yeah, I see. I can see both sides of that, but yeah.
Like I can see both sides, but I can't anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? I can't anymore.
Yeah.
That's just being stubborn. You know what I mean? Like, there's if let's say Bicycle Union, let's say someone said, "Hey, you make Bicycle Union bikes. We're going to make a lower end bike that's supposed to be low end. We're going to make it clear it is for entry level bikes, so kids who don't have a lot of money can get on a bike and learn how to ride bikes. And we're going to give you $1 million a year for that, John, and you can put that into whatever you want. The bikes look cool. They just aren't the quality, but they're supposed to break, and everyone knows they're supposed to break. How can that be bad for you on bike riding?
I still couldn't do it.
You do it. You couldn't do it because the deal's not on the table. But someone hands you that check. That's a different story.
Oh, true.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like, the deal's never on the table, but you know what I mean? And then imagine but what if you could pay all your riders $100,000 a year then?
Yeah.
How do you say no to all your riders doing that?
Yeah.
Be hard to do.
I still can see like from both sides. But I saw like how much of an uproar that the Hawk bikes, the Huck Jam bikes got. Like, but I can't remember where it was. Where was the fuss made?
It was at one of the inner bikes.
But it was in print, right?
No, they didn't do any print. Oh, did someone write some about it?
I'm not sure.
I don't know. By that time, the internet was going, so it could have been anywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I don't know. The amount of non-issue it is for a bike company, bikes, is ridiculous because it wasn't competing with not one bike company.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was going to say.
It's not competing. My point is, it should have been competing because the other bike companies should have been doing the same.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I get it.
You got dudes who spend their whole life riding bikes, changing the sport, and have nothing now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if the brands would have made choices as a whole to support bike riding, those people, they'd be doing good. You know what I mean? And the brands would be going. And the industry would have, an extra 5 million or 10 million bikes sold.
Yeah.
It's at some point, my care shifted towards BMX instead of towards BMX or BMXers instead of BMX. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what is better for the whole sport, not just a few brands, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what the Tony Hawk bikes is about.
Yeah, he definitely. Yeah.
People were pissed though.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, I remember hearing about it. Yeah.
Yeah, because and I get it. I get why they just think Tony Hawk. What's he making bikes for?
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was Huck Jam. You know what I mean? It was just being marketed as Tony's, which isn't anyone's fault because he wasn't doing it. You know what I mean? He licensed it. And I understand that. But if you could just shut your mouth, not you, but they could shut their mouths for a second and think about it.
Yeah.
They could be like, oh, I understand why this is happening. I may not agree with it, but I understand.
Yeah.
You know?
So what was the story with Redline? How did you end up riding for Redline?
So Redline, I don't know exactly how, but I had heard, I think, that they were looking to try to do a team, and I didn't ride for anybody at that point because I had rode for Hoffman, and then I rode for Volume and Demolition, and then I quit Volume because me and Brian were kind of butting heads, and it was just too much. I want to be friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then K2 wanted to sponsor me, and they never did. That was a thing. And I was like, all right, well, let me see what Redline. And I was like, maybe we could turn Redline back into something cool.
Yeah.
And so I went to Redline, and I said, hey, I want to do this, and I'll redesign the bikes and everything. So they offered me $62,000 a year.
Wow.
Which was an absurd amount of money. Like, absurd amount of money. I was like, what? But I didn't take it. I said, I think if you just sponsor me, it's going to look like you're trying to sponsor your way into the industry, back into cool. You know what I mean? So I said, let's split the money up between me, Rich Hurst, and Dustin Guenther. So we all split the money. Right? And we just started designing bikes. So I didn't take that money. I split it with everybody so that I felt like I could carry three of us. It would look like we were really trying to do something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of just like things are not going to. We redesigned the bike, the device. I tried to go back to that old school like two-tone fade, black and green.
Yeah.
You know how they were in the 80s. And the first pre-sale of the we only made 100. The year before the device came out, Redline sold one aftermarket frame. One. This year we made 100. the 100 for the first run, and we sold out in a couple days at Interbike, in a day or something like crazy. We sold them all out. And they had their biggest pre-books that they'd ever had, they told me, in 34 years of Redline. Because they also made completes, like the completes were going, the freestyle completes, right? And it was 100, but Gork, who ran it, he said, well, it all had to do with racing, except nothing had changed in racing. You know what I mean? Because they were such a big racing brand. And so, and in my contract, I had final say on any ads, anything that went out in my contract. So for 2 years, I had to tell Gork no. And I don't think he liked that very much, you know? And so I thought we were building this brand. Like we had me, Rich Hurst, Dustin Guenther, Tyrone, I believe he was on it too. Oh, yeah. And then we sponsored, and then at one of the Dew Tours, I picked up Garrett Reynolds and what's the other kid's name from Northern California? He just started riding again. I don't know why I'm blanking it. I'm getting old. Another guy that was one of the biggest dudes back then. Yeah. He's from he's from NorCal. And we all made a little bit of money. And then I tried to get, before I was gone, I tried to get Gork to pay those dudes $300 a month because Garrett Reynolds got offered something. And then he said, no, those dudes aren't worth it. It wasn't worth spending $300. And then I remember Garrett came to me and he was really like his little kid. And he was like, man, Premium asked me to ride for him. And he was worried that I was going to be bummed. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I was like, dude, you need to go ride for Premium. Like, this is the company you want to, like, you only get to do this one time, man. Go do exactly what we want to do. You're not hurting my feelings. You know what I mean? Like, you can't, if someone quits a company to go ride for someone else, unless you're putting them, you've committed to some sort of financial thing, like frames are coming or something. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, go do exactly. You get one chance at doing this, dude. So then when the 2 years was up, I got a letter 2 months after. I wasn't getting paid for 2 months. I got a letter. I have it. I came across it the other day saying that we've decided not to continue your whatever. He said not to continue your contract, and that I'd been just taking advantage of the company. And here's 2 months severance, but it was just the 2 months they owed me because they were 2 months late on the contract. And then at that time I got Fuzzy Hall the job too for team manager, I think. And so I put him in that, I'd help put that in that position. And then he started doing it, but then it just started being a brand with everybody. You know, I think Hucker Road, it started being a brand. We just started sponsoring random dudes. And there was no, like I said, if there's no bad, then there's no good. And sometimes you got to keep things a certain way to sort of keep them cool, you know?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Especially that early on, we were trying to rebrand that brand so much. And it just sort of started sponsoring all these just random dirt jump kids. And it just sort of fell apart. And now it's gone. There's no Redline.
Oh, it doesn't exist at all?
Well, Redline got sold, but that program disappeared after a few years.
Right. Yeah, okay.
You know,
Gork, he's a name from the 80s or something, right?
Yeah, he was like a race dude, but he also did some freestyle type, you know, like part of the magazines, I think, and things like that.
Yeah, freestyling or something.
And I think now he runs the BMX museum. And, you know, there's a place for Gork doing what he does, but at that point in time in BMX, he was not equipped to have the right information to be able to pull off Redline's freestyle program.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, at that point in time, it was a task making a brand like that look respectable.
And I think we did a good job. We made it cool for a brief second, and then it just needed to keep it going, and it just didn't, you know?
That would be I don't think that could have happened at all, but yeah.
But I think if we would have stayed with it, it would be like a Haro now, you know what I mean? Yeah. I think it'd be a big brand.
Yeah.
Big brand as far as like a brand people would be buying frames, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then after that, I wrote for nobody, and then until Ian gave me a call.
Tell us briefly about Citizen, because that was another thing that had momentum, and then it just didn't happen.
Citizen was going to be, because that was the time when no one wanted to ride Taiwanese frames.
Yeah.
Right? It was like a big taboo. Matt was making bikes in Taiwan, and Matt, I think, is the forefront of getting good bikes made in Taiwan. Right? Because they were crap before that. Matt made bikes. He got bikes to be made good in Taiwan. I would get a complete bike out of the box, complete, and ride it complete. And I never broke one Hoffman the entire time for 5 years, 6 years. And so, but it was like a thing where people wanted American made. You had Terrible One was doing American made. I don't know if Fit was out yet, but basically Citizen was going to be S&M's Fit.
Okay.
Right? I mean, you know what I mean? Like Citizen was going to be Hoffman's Fit, you know?
Yeah, okay.
American made, or like, but Fit was, you know, but like that version of it, like a cool company that, and it had to do, there was some issues with like some toys and because everyone was getting toys at that time, we were doing frames, and some sort of issue came up where Matt just decided he didn't want to do it anymore. And so we just went away. I'd already quit Hoffman to ride for Citizen. That was what we made it look like. And then he decided he didn't want to ride, didn't want to do Citizen. And then I wasn't on Hoffman anymore. So that was just the end of it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. There's probably more to it than that, but it's been so long, man. I can't remember.
Did you have a prototype frame or anything made?
That is a very upsetting story. I had a frame. We made 2 frames, one for Nate, one for me. When I made the Mexican frame on Volume, I gave my bike to Volume, Law at Volume, and they were going to use as a model, right? And I never got it back from Taiwan.
Oh, wow.
That frame got gone into the history books. Yeah. And another early 90s, mid-90s, I was going to do a company with, after Homeless went away and then Family didn't happen, me and Eben were going to, and that was like 95 and 95, we were going to do a company called Halfway House. Like we couldn't handle being homeless, couldn't start a family. And so we were going to do Halfway House. And I have those. I have both of those. I have mine and Eben's Halfway House frames, which are.
Oh, so you got samples of them, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We rode those. We rode those. We bent those tubes. We bent all the tubes in his backyard around the poles on his patio with a tube bender.
Well, he welded them up.
What?
You welded them up.
Some dude in San Antonio.
Wow.
Made it for us. Yeah, we were down there because summer of '95 or summer of '94. That would have been in '94. Summer of '94, I went and stayed in Texas for a month, and with Eben, and we did it then.
And who made the Citizen prototypes?
I don't know. Hoffman had someone make them.
I remember. Okay.
They probably made them because they were making all the. There's probably Chuck D who made them because they made all the bikes were in house in the ramp house, and then then they went to Taiwan, but they had all that machinery still, so they probably made them.
Oh wow.
So yeah.
Yeah, interesting story that one.
I
remember the advert in the mag.
Yeah, the face, right?
Yeah, the face. Yeah.
Nate made that. I actually have, because those bikes that are made in the ramp house, the Hoffman bikes are American made in the ramp house, are like worth a lot of money. Dudes, the collectors love those things.
Yeah, well, they've got to be rare. Yeah, right.
My first Hoffman I got, they didn't have any bikes in, so Matt gave me one of his old bikes. It's a black one with red stickers, and Matt had a cover of Ride Magazine doing it's like a greenish sort of cover. He's doing a tail whip out of an extension on a street course, and it's that bike. I have that bike. So I have that bike from that cover, and it's a ramp bike, and I've been offered like $3,000 for it, which seems crazy to me, but I'll never let it go,
Yeah. Yeah, nice, man. And then how did you end up on United then?
I remember I was actually at the Tony Hawk warehouse watching those dudes ride vert. They were doing events, and Ian called me and goes, "Yo, you don't ride for anybody. That's crazy that you don't ride for anybody." Because at that point, I had stopped right around 2010. I had sort of not stopped caring, but I was just I wasn't looking for sponsors. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just riding my bike, right? And it was actually a bit free. It was a bit awesome because I was I just ride whatever I want. I know I don't have to make anyone happy. And so, and then Ian just called me "Yo, how do you not ride for? You should just ride for United." He's like, because me and Ian had been bringing me over for 15 years because of Hoffman bikes and other things, right?
Yeah.
He was the distributor. And so he's like, you just here. And I just told him, look, it's fine. I would love to ride for you, but I want to ride for you forever. I don't, you know what I mean? That's it.
Yeah.
It's forever. It's forever. You know what I mean? I'm like, you don't have to pay me anything. You don't have to do whatever. You know what I mean? I'll just ride for you forever. You know what I mean? That's it. And so I think he paid me a little bit in the beginning, but then when we started doing the caveman, we were going to use that money to make one of the molds. I'm like, just put all that money towards the mold. And then we didn't make the mold, and he just never paid me again. Worked out for him. But I mean, I think I've told him this before. I'm like, stop paying me and give it to, this is a decade ago. Give it to one of the younger, newer kids. You know what I mean? Like, it's not enough money for me to make a difference in my life. Not that I was rich, but you know what I mean? I'm like, give it to a kid that it's going to change their life. You know what I mean? Because there's only so much money to go around when trying to pay dudes, you know? And so I just told Ian, I was like, I'm down, but it's forever. Like, so that was it. And then they had just come out with This Is United.
Yeah.
Out too, but I didn't have enough time to get a part in that. And so we were filming for a demolition video. And then at that point, I got fired, not fired, but my contract, I mean, they just said, like, you're off. I got kicked off demolition because they thought I wasn't doing anything, because they were doing all trips and I was doing all these trips on my own. And Brian didn't realize that I had filmed so much stuff. You know what I mean? I've been on one demolition trip. I'm like, there was 2 clips. And I remember he was like, we're going to put this in your part of the demolition video. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, I paid for all that footage. You know what I mean? Like, I went on all these trips. So that was a lot of that footage for that part was my footage from demolition. And then once we thought it was going to be like a sort of an extension of This Is United, you know, it came out right afterwards online. And arguably, I think maybe one of my best video parts, I think, for me. That was sort of my introduction to United.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, that's
good. It started like an S-rail.
Yeah, it had real good feedback as well for that video.
Yeah, that one. I think I got nominated for a what's that thing? The Nora Cup.
No,
I got nominated. I think I got second or something. I've never won a Nora Cup out of all the years, because back then Nora Cups, they would do first, second, and third, and they would post the results. And so I got second and third like tons of times. I've never gotten a Nora Cup. That was the one thing in BMX that I've never gotten.
Didn't they stop for a few years though as well?
Yeah, they stopped. In the years that I probably had a best chance of getting it, they stopped.
Yeah,
you know, they didn't do it early on. Early on, I probably may have had a chance of getting it, but also it was originally just like one Nora Cup forever.
Yeah,
you know,
And so how did the frame end up with a bash guard on it? Like, what's this bash guard fascination? I remember you had a bike, the Hoffman with a bash guard, like ages ago.
99, I had Hoffman weld me a bash guard bike because I wanted to do 2 tricks. One was like a half cab 90 onto a handrail. I wanted to and Jeremy Ray at the time was doing 270 on the handrails to board slide on a skateboard. And I was like, dude, that's dope. You could do that on a bike if you had a bash guard. So that's what I got. That's why I got that bash guard, those 2 tricks. And I annihilated myself trying to learn those. I wish I had footage of it because I never filmed it because I never got it, right?
Yeah.
I annihilated myself trying to learn those 2 tricks. Later, I think I've seen people do like on little skate park pyramids, like 270 to sprocket off. You know what I mean? But at the time, and so that's what that bash guard for. So fast forward 17 years. I was like, Ian, I talked to Ian about doing a bike for a few years. Like, no one wants a rooftop bike. I'm like, you're probably right. And then I talked to him like, hey, what about, and I started collecting bash guards. Me and Jason Enns were collecting old bash guard bikes, just for fun. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to just do a bash guard bike. There's still some cool stuff to be done. And I really believe bash guard, but I'm like, I'm going to do a throwback to that first bike I ever bought, that Haro Sport. So we just made that, and I was like, let's just do a run of it. Like, I think we did 100 or 95 or something with the first run, and they sold out like quick.
Yeah.
Quick. And I think it was meant to be like, I wanted to, at the time, by that time, I had fully let go of any ego I had as being a bike rider. I just was riding bikes, riding pools for fun. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
No, because for a long time, I was like, I thought I couldn't even go to a skate park without having to like do a show, you know? Now I could go to like the biggest event and be like, yeah, I'm going to do tail taps all day. I don't care. I didn't feel that pressure. And so I was like, I want to build it. And also I think bikes got to a point, or still are, where every bike looks exactly the same. You know what I mean? And like, I look at my bike and it elicited no feeling to me. Like, yeah, there's my bike. And so I was like, I'm going to make a bike that when I made it and I put it together, it made me feel the way I felt when I got that first Bashguard bike, like the bikes that I got when you know what I mean, when my whole life was doing that, you know. And so I just you know, I was like, I want to do that, and it's sort of, the customer is the guy who's my age looking to get a bike. That, you know, feels like that. You know what I mean? But the problem is the sprockets are so small now that the Bashguard, the money, like the sweet spot on a Bashguard is like this big, right? It needs to be for at least a 32 sprocket to give it enough space. You know what I mean? But I do believe that if the right person was to ride a Bashguard bike, it would be, people would make them. You know what I mean? If you got someone who was doing like full lip slides, because they do it on crank arms now, you know what I mean, and stuff. But if you had something where you weren't bound by a weird crank arm slide, and you could just, like a ledge that came off stairs, and just, you know, like board slide to fake you off it, sort of. Like I think you could totally, they'd be popular, you know?
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about like the helicopter backflip and the 360.
360, the world record one?
No, I think, was that a world record? I mean, it probably was a world record. That you 360'd the helicopter for the Etnies vid, right?
No. I backflipped the helicopter for the Etnies video. I backflipped the helicopter, and that was for MTV Sports and Music Festival. And they asked what I wanted to do. I said, I'll jump a helicopter. And that was actually pretty gnarly. The whole situation was bananas.
So, that was in the Etnies vid.
That was in Forward, yeah.
Yeah. So
and then later, 5 years later, I had a chance to set and do some more records at the X Games on the Mega Ramp before they let bikes in the Mega Ramp, and I did a flip and a 360 table, one-handed table over that.
Okay, I watched the one on Forward. So was the one
that's the helicopter.
Yeah. So but how far was that gap?
You know, it was only, I want to say it was like 34 or 38 feet. But the problem was no one jumping stuff that big back then. We built the lip too steep. So when I hit the lip, it was like hitting a brick wall going that fast, you know? It was actually safer to flip it. Jumping it straight was just like a boom.
Yeah.
Trying to get over it, you know? But it was pretty gnarly. It's pretty gnarly.
The rolling looked just insane. Like the rolling looked terrifying, yeah.
I couldn't pedal on it because every time it would be different, right? So what we did was I put it 8 feet, and then I went up and I made a line on the rolling, and I just put my feet on and rolled and did a flip. Then I moved it back, and I went up. I moved it back 8 feet, and I moved up 8 feet.
Okay.
We kept doing that. We got the distance. But on the day, with the helicopter going, you know, I must have been pumping or taking a half crank because I kept over-rotating and overshooting it. So like a stupid idiot, I said, you know what? I'm going to go down lower then.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to go from there. And I'm going to try to hang my back wheel and safety case it to make it, because we had a foot deck on it.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I cased it and went down because I took 4 crashes and then I got it, I believe. But if I would have fallen backwards, cased it, I would have been dead.
Yeah.
You know, I would have been dead. And the helicopter would have flipped over and just spun until it disintegrated, you know? It was for surely like a life or death thing if I would have, like that fact that I went lower than I knew what the speed was to clear it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just pumped it through.
Because it's quite easy to look at that and be dismissive of something like that, you know, when you don't hear the story. Like you're just like, oh yeah, but you're going to clear it anyway. Like, You just But with the 360, I thought the 360 looked harder than the flip.
Well, but the 360 was 5 years later at the X Games. But the 360. So they gave me an opportunity. They called me because they'd done Mega Ramp 1 year. I was like, hey, I kept at the X Games. I was like, I want to do it. Let's make it bikes. No. And then about a month before X Games in 2005, they were like, you want to try to break the world record on it? We'll let you ride the ramp for an hour during skate practice before the event opens. So there's no crowds. It was just the skaters there practicing. Yeah. So I'd never jumped it before. I'd never jumped that far before. So I flew out to Travis Pastrana's like a month earlier, and he wasn't even there. Someone was there, and we put the motorcycle takeoff, 50 feet back from the foam pit, and I just pedaled down his driveway to see if I could make it. I didn't know to do the distance in a foam. So I flipped it a bunch, and I was like, man, I really want to 360 it. So I kept trying to 360. But when you go through fast at 360, it's easy to clip your back wheel.
Yeah.
So I was trying to pull them like this, like a flip. And that's why I would do table one-handers, because I thought if I took my hand off, I could dip it and hold it there, right? I could hold it that long distance in my hand. And so that's what I did. And I was doing them into the foam, and I was like, sweet. So I got that. I go back. So now we're back at the X Games. First couple, I jump off. And then the first couple, I actually clip the safety case and bounce down the landing. And then I finally get one. The problem is I think the record was 54 feet by Alan Cook, I think. And the sweet spot on this ramp was 50 feet. So for me to break the record, I had to land way down past the sweet spot, low. And I think that's why. So I had to do a float one and then drop a long ways down the landing. You know what I mean? To make it I think it was 63 feet. I think something like that. So I did that, and then I had like a half hour left. So I'm like, I'm gonna 360 it. They're like, no. I was like, no, I'm doing it. So I chucked a couple threes. I over rotated a few of them, slid out, popped the tire, and then right at the buzzer, I got one. And that was a 50, little over 50 foot 6 inch 360. But at that time, no one had done that, right? And
it just looks unreal. Like you kind of go off the ramp and you've not even, I mean, obviously you've not turned, but it don't look like you're going to turn. You just kind of go like leaning off of it. It's like
John Povah shot a photo of me at one-handed table, and I'm at 90 degrees.
Yeah.
And I'm like 12 feet from the lip already. Yeah. I've already gone like 12 feet or something. And I'm at a 90 one-handed table already. Oddly enough, so now that actually made they made Sports Center play of the day and play of the week, which is like huge, like for action sports, you know. Yeah. Like back then, ESPN was just getting in, you know, just starting to do it, and they were starting, you know. Usually that stuff's baseball and shit, you know.
Yeah.
But then the next year, they decided to do an event, and I wasn't invited. So I was the only dude that had footage or could make any story of, and they didn't invite me. And then day of, Jamie Beswick, I think it was Jamie Beswick. I could be wrong. I think he was in it, but he pulled out. I could totally be wrong, but I think so. And then they invited me, like, oh, you can be in it now. And I was like, no, I can't, you dicks. But I should have, because back then it was like the jump and people were airing the quarter pipe 8 feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't that big of a deal. So I could have aired it 8 feet and just done a tabletop. And I probably would have got first or second. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Morgan 360'd it that year too. Totally different though. He just did a regular 360. He did it a total way that I wouldn't have done it. You know, he muscled it a different way. But yeah, so and then I think I was in it a couple years after that, like a few years after that. But by that time it become more about vert, and that was no longer my But one of the last year I was trying to do lip tricks on it. I did some ice pick grinds. I was trying to nose pick it. I toothpick it. I want to toothpick bar spin it. I never got it. It's really hard. And then Nyquist got it at Woodward West, you know, years later. He did one. But I want to do Fufanu to front flip. So I went to Woodward West and put a sub box up on top of the vert ramp, and that went over the vert ramp to foam pit. I would fly up, Fufanu the 6 foot tall box, and then front flip into the foam. And I was like, I'm doing this. I'm going to Fufanu front flip this. And it's hard to judge your speed to get to the lip at the right speed, right?
So are you going in forwards?
Yeah, Fufanu and then forwards.
Forwards, front flip.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And so, because I thought backflip, I was afraid I'd launch myself out to flat.
Yeah.
Right? So I have a footage somewhere where I'm like, okay, let me just try one on the Resi, the vert Resi. It's about 15 feet tall. I'll just like try to do a Fufanu. Like it ended up being more of a tail tap because I overshot it a little bit. Tail tap and I'll front flip in. And then I realized what I should have realized from the beginning, that front flips are stupid and that I should never do that. I ejected myself all the way to flat to my back. And so I cut that idea right out. But I think a dude could do it now, no problem.
What? So you was on the Resi though? Or?
Yeah, I did it on the Resi because the Resi, you know, has a deck on it. So I mean, we'll cue the footage right now.
All right. Yeah. Cool. So is that? So you kind of from them helicopter jumps, was you already doing stunt work, or did that kind of take you into that?
I did my first stunt job in high school. And it was all bike stuff. And I would do some bike jobs here and there for about the first decade. And then I didn't do anything. And then I did this movie called Stick It. That had a whole BMX beginning. And so, but it was me, Scotty Cranmer, and Eddie Fiola did this one sequence. I'm not sure why they used it. At the time, they wanted someone to do it. I did the sequence off a roof, and I actually did it all. Like 360 scaffolding, then I feeble grounded a ladder, like down from another scaffolding, all skinny, then dropped into like a pool slide that was made like a ramp at the end. And they wanted Scotty Cranmer to do a double tail whip backflip. At the time, he was the only person who could do it, right? So they hired him, but it was just in the boxes. He didn't have to land it, so I could have done that.
Yeah.
And I had to do some flip out of it, and we do an air and flip out of the pool, and then through a window. And then after I did that movie, I started doing more stunts, like actual non-bike riding stunts. But it wasn't until 2005 that I started doing things that weren't bikes.
Okay. And that's just the natural transition from what you're doing, I guess, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I had an inner. I mean, I've wanted to be a stuntman since I was in high school. So
yeah,
it was always going to happen, you know.
Yeah. Well, I've seen what's it like working for Marvel? I saw you in them films.
Yeah, I did. I've done a few Marvel movies. I did a Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which I worked on for like 4 or 5 months. I think I did Captain Marvel, one of the Captain Americas, Ant-Man. I've also done the Suicide Squad. I worked on for weeks. Okay. It's cool. You know what I mean? Those are such big movies. On Guardians 2, I was in full prosthetics, so I'm an alien. So that's like a new thing for me.
You get blown up in the forest. Is that you?
I did get one of those. I die in that movie probably 30 times.
Oh, okay.
But, I'm one of those that get blown up. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's what I thought.
And also, at some point when Yondu, the blue guy with the mohawk, gets his arrow back, while he's in the cell, I run into the cell and he shoots me with the arrow right into me.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know the scene. Yeah, I like that film. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's a blessing to be a part of those. All that stuff. I just had to turn down, or I couldn't do stuff in that new Black Panther movie coming out. That didn't work out.
Okay.
But yeah,
the newer stuff's been it's not been that great, to be honest. But that stuff that you was in was fucking cool, man. So yeah, what you were saying kind of lines up with this question that I'm going to ask you. Like what do you get out of bike riding now?
Well, probably between like 2014 to 2018, maybe 2010 probably. 2010. Me and Jason Enns really started riding a lot together. We rode before that, but then we really were we were on missions every weekend. And it kind of turned into just pools. And then Brian Terada joined in, and also Andrew Lazarick. But it was really about backyard pools. And part of that is for two things. One, we just get to hang out. We get to drive around and look for stuff. And the search for it was real fun and finding something. And another one for me is that I only have to do about 5 or 6 tricks on a pool and I can feel somewhat fulfilled riding my bike. It keeps me safe. You'll never catch me at a skate park pedaling as fast as I can at a transfer. Because I can't be getting hurt riding my bike like that, But the last couple years, I've been really hurt. My hips. I've had hip issues because of bike riding, and I've gone over last year. I went over 100 physical therapy appointments in a year. 108, I think. Just trying to get my hips back, and it has to do with something specifically when my hips. I'm in that pedaling position, it causes my hips to seize up and pinch nerves and stuff. And so we've been working on it. So I've ridden my bike maybe 4 or 5 times in the last 18 months just to see if I can get there. And I'm almost back to where I think I can really start riding again. I'm actually getting stem cell in December at Chipsa, which is a place in Mexico. I'm going for a week and getting stem cell in my spine, my knees, my hips, my ankles, wrists, all these toes, all these things, which I think will help with being able to get back on the bike. But back to your question, for me, bike riding is just I've been doing it for 3/4 of my life.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people can say they've been doing something for 3/4 of their life. And it's just such a part of me. There's times now I drive down the street, and before I drive and see spots, I'm like, oh, that'd be sick. And I wish I could do it, but I'm never going to do it. Not because I can't, I don't think, but I believe that I can't because I'll never put enough time in on my bike to be at a level comfortable and good enough to do it without potentially getting really hurt. You know what I mean? It being a Hail Mary,
Yeah.
And I don't know if that'll ever go away. There's definitely days when I don't think about my bike, which I never thought would be the case. But I think that's only because I'm not riding. When I am riding and I'm doing it, every other weekend or weekend, whatever it is, then I miss it because I remember how good it is to feel like good. You know what I mean? But for me, it's just, I'm a bike rider. You know what I mean? I don't think that'll ever change. And pools, with backyard pools, like I said, it keeps what I can do contained in a place where I can stay. I can do things that challenge me and I feel are fun. And I'm not putting myself in a position to be getting myself in trouble riding my bike because I gotta, at some point I have to just be a stuntman or whatever else. I can't chance not being able to pay the bills because I want to do a handrail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, there'll be a group of tricks for sure that I will dream about and it'll haunt me to the day I die that I never got done. There'll be spots that got torn out or tricks that I try to do for video parts. Things like that that'll just never that won't happen. That'll just never happen. They eat me up inside.
Yeah,
they eat me up. It's crazy. I think that would go away, but it doesn't.
Like they've probably been eeating you up for a few years already, right?
Yeah, there's one thing that I tried to do in one of the Caveman edits, 2017 one, I think. It was like a double kink rail that went down the side of a hill at an angle, and I kind of kicked in a long dirt lip, and you could like air off this dirt lip up on this handrail, and then you'd come down the double kinker back to the cement. And like I tried to do it, and the thing was wreckety, so there's always cars parked there. So like we tried, we got one shot at it, and the one shot I fell on it, and cut my leg on the rail because it was a janky ass rail, and needed stitches, and then we never got another go at it because there was always cars in the way. And then it eats me up, die. And so the other day I was working up in Santa Clarita, and I was a movie called Rebel Moon, and I was like, we were kind of by that area. I'm like, I'm gonna drive by and see if it's still there. Like that's something I could maybe do. You know what I mean? Like I get into doing that, and the rail is gone, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to me because I know that it's not there, and I can't. I know the opportunity is gone, and I just it's the best thing that's ever happened. Seeing that rail. After I got over the heartbreak that it was gone, I'm like, thank God, I never have to think about it again.
Put it to rest. Yeah.
Funny.
And I guess now might be a good chance for you to say what you wanted to say earlier.
Oh yeah, I mean, bike riding. I think because I know people like, oh, Mike's dissing bike riding, but it's not that I'm dissing it. Like I think every generation has what they loved about bike riding, and bike riding changes through it changes, trends change and things change. But I think the thing for where bike riding is right now is that some of us have such a respect and gave so much to bike riding for so many years now, gave our body, gave our bodies and I mean, head injuries and really sacrificed a lot. And I think we see things happening that we wish were better as far as even like industry wise. And we see kids doing things that we wish they were getting more for, knowing that they're going to kill themselves and no one's ever going to care, and also you see things that get promoted on some of the media that you're like, this sucks. What you're showing sucks. It's not cool. You know what I mean? It may be hard, but it's not cool. And then it perpetuates more people doing uncool shit. And I think you fell in love with bike riding, or I fell in love with bike riding so much that you just want it to always look cool. Now that's up to interpretation on what cool is, but I'm pretty sure you, John, know which guys that you ride with that aren't fucking cool.
Yeah, I hope so, yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, I feel like there will always be levels of where bike riding is. And like, I won't name names, but there's guys in bike riding who are better than anyone has ever been and are in the top 5 best bike riders in the world. And they never really got a shot at it because they were not cool or they didn't look cool doing it. You know what I mean? And as much as that sucks, there's a reason that happens, because then shit starts to be uncool.
Yeah.
Look at like the park dudes now, like I remember Daniel Sandoval probably doesn't remember this, but we were at Germany. X Games was doing global X Games for a while. And I was at an event in Germany and Park was about to start. And I was there watching practice. And then I remember Daniel Sandoval was there. And I would have to put Daniel Sandoval as one of the best dudes to ever ride a bike in that specific arena, parks and bowls and stuff like that, right? You can't deny that, right? You see him ride his backyard now, like he's doing stuff that is insanely unheard of, But I remember he got upset because he's like, "Oh, you're leaving? You're not going to watch it?" I'm like, "No, because Park has turned into the dumbest of all the events. Because, not the dumbest, but the worst to watch because y'all picked 4 tricks and you just do versions of that. No-hander, bar spin, tail whip, and flare. You know what I mean? And you all decided to look like the ugliest version of that shit done. Like you've all decided to look like a weird robotic thing of it." And I'm like, and I think about it, like I remember thinking like, because like I said, this isn't a diss on Daniel Sandoval because like I'm saying, he's one of the best bike riders to ever touch a bike in that, in that thing. But if he went and learned to ride his bike like Gary Rung rode his bike and did all the stuff he could do, he's unstoppable. Yeah. There's no way you could compete with him. But it's weird that bike riders turn into these segments where, like, if you watch all those dudes who ride Park now, the Olympics, they all look identically the same. You dress them the same, you don't know who it is. You have no idea who it is. But you do that in like you see like the difference between a Rob Nolly and a Taj Mihellich tail whip.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because some shit just needs to look different. You know what I mean? And it's just a matter of, I think that people lost somewhere in this BMX lost its personality. You know what I mean? For a lot of the guys who were contest guys and things like that, where it was more about it looks more like gymnastics. You know what I mean? And I'm not dissing the wild tricks. I just mean even the form of it. You're like, yeah, that's cool, but it's not cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. Yeah,
and I guess I would love to turn on like the Olympics and be like, damn, this is being represented in a way that represents youth and that action sports industry instead of it looking and sounding like gymnastics.
Yeah,
even the announcing now is like, there's some guys who are bike riders, some aren't, but even the bike rider announcers, instead of keeping the sort of soul of where they came from, they've abandoned it, and it feels very, very broadcast. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I get it; they're doing a good job, and that's the job. But I feel like there is a duty to these sports to keep them what they are, while trying to make them as big as possible.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's the same. But it's the same thing. If I don't know what they're doing, and you don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, there you go. That's the other thing that's weird is bike riders have this industry, this era has just renamed tricks. Like they'll just be like, "Yo, check out this 540 flare." I'm like, I'm not an expert. I've only been doing this for 30 years. But I think if you don't go upside down, it's not a flare.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or like my biggest one is the double downside whip 360. Watch one. Tell me that bike tail whips twice. It tail whips one goddamn time. If you do a 180 downside whip, you meet it on the other side and then go backwards, right?
Yeah.
If you do a double downside whip, you just do 180 more and you call it a double downside whip. It's fucking bananas. And I have to listen to people, or you listen to people announce it and you're like, there was another one that was like, somebody did like, they said it was a 540 flare bar spin tail up. And I'm like, if you watch it in slow motion, he goes up, does a bar spin air, and then does a decade air. There's no 540, there's no tail whip, and you're like...
But that's what I mean. It's so complex and like weird looking that you can't look at it in real time and be like, oh yeah, that was a blah, blah, blah.
Some of it's not the announcer's fault because it looks like what you think you saw. But then you watch it and you're like, well, actually, no one did a tail up ever once, and no one did a 540. That was like a bar spin to decade. And like, you know what I mean? It just, because the bike is at a weird axis, you know what I mean? Like,
it's a different angle,
I just feel like bike riding has lost a little bit of its heart. You know what I mean? Like, when I mean heart of where it came from, you know?
Well, only if you look in them directions, though, like...
Yeah.
There's still like real good stuff that goes on.
I mean, you look at like that Vans contest the other day that was on the beach, US Open. It was rad, and the course was rad, you know. And it was like it was built. It was done. It was rad to watch, and people did really sick stuff. But I just wish it was more. I wish the stuff that the mainstream saw was a little bit more representative of the heart of what BMX is, you know, or where it came from. and I just feel like it's just gotten like, I hate to use the word whitewashed, but just sort of like TV washed into being this very broadcast. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, but I heard that even that was like not that great compared to the skate contest they put on there.
I didn't watch the skate contest. I think that there is I think there needs to be somebody working for the brands for bike ridings for these contests. They go, okay, this is good for BMX.
Yeah, exactly.
Skateboarding, not let the skateboarders decide what's good for bike riding. There's even things in the course that you're like, one little tweak here, and this course would have flowed really, and you would have gotten transfers and all sorts of stuff, and it would have really let bike riding showcase what's possible. You know?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like anyone cares in them companies.
I think bike riding's back at a spot where they're just happy to be a part of it.
Yeah.
You know, which is like the mentality. I think if I would have had that for Etnies, we're just happy to be a part of Etnies, then it wouldn't have grown into what it was. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, I hate that the squeaky wheel gets the oil, but you also have to respect what you're doing enough to push it. And while saying that, I'm not dissing anybody who had anything to do with those events, because I know how hard it is to put those on. Yeah. But I think sometimes you have to talk to other people and see what the collective is, because sometimes there's a lot going on. You know, you're doing so much work to get it done. You forget a few cuts and realize that you've missed a big mark.
Yeah, but I think it's important to know like people's feedback though as well.
Yeah,
if they're people that are worth listening to, not just anyone, you know. But
and also I think some things, when it comes to doing stuff in front of people and for a broadcast, you have to just make some things that have a little bit of a wow factor.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, look at the swamp, the Swamp Fest. You know what I mean? Like, that has a wow factor. You know what I mean? But as an event, it's a pile of shit. You know what I mean? Like, if a big brand put that on, you know what I mean? Like it's just a bunch of dudes. Like, to me, it's like, it looks like a nightmare to go to. I don't want to be in a field full of mud. You know what I mean? It also is a weird thing, and I never said this, but it's like he took all the obstacles from forward and turned them into an event. Grind flip, grind loop stuff. It's all the shit people hated me for is now an event everyone loves. Tell me I'm wrong, guy. It's just as good.
I'm not that familiar with Swamp Fest, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that everyone's getting to do it, but it's funny knowing how much hate I got for all that stuff.
Yeah, I remember the rail
grind
flip.
Rails and grind loops, and you know what I mean? Fire, all that stuff. Yeah. People hated me. And now it's like they're signing up to go do it in the rain. You know what I mean? It's bananas. How times have changed.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. Well, have you got anything else that you want to?
No.
You want to tick off?
Anything else you want to know about?
Well, I could go forever, but like,
we got enough for one more question. Probably, I got to get out of here. I got to run.
But you're happy with like what you said about BMX, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, I always say stuff because I feel like forever I've been a voice standing up. I think so, standing up for bikes. Like, even Gary Young told me one time, he's like, yo, one time at one of the CFB contests, the Hoffman guys tried to cut amateur practice, and you were like, no, dude, you can't cut amateur practice. And I stood up to everybody on my own sponsor, and the AMS got thing, and he was like, thank you for that. I don't remember those things, but I feel like I've always been like a voice of standing up for bike riding, even if bike riders didn't really understand why I was standing up for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it is, you know, some of it is just me. I'm just a grouchy old man. But you know, a lot of it, most of it is because you cared so much about one thing that was, I give everything to this. You know what I mean? I literally lost my mind trying to push bike riding. You know what I mean? Where I was at. Through adversity where everyone hated what I was doing. And now those things that they hated are just normal shit, you know?
Yeah.
That you just want to see the best. And you see this group of riders that are the most talented that bikes riders have ever seen on every level. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't be pro now. There's no way. Yeah. Like, if I tried to do it now, couldn't even compete. You know what I mean? And you just want to see them use it to the full potentials. Like when I see people bunny hop now, they bunny hop so high. You know what I mean? Yet they're still grinding ledges that are 18 inches tall. If I could bunny hop that high, I would be fucking grinding things that divided property lines. I'd be grinding fences that went in between property. You know what I mean? I'd be using fences that went from property downhill as handrails. Like, you know what I mean? And there's some guys who are doing that's not what I'm saying, but I just see the potential. And also I can see a potential because I know I'm in no danger of doing it anymore. You know what I mean? Like, so I can see the potential more than maybe it's even possible or some people want to do because I can sit back and go, this would be sick. I'm never going to do it and I'm not going to get hurt. But these dudes could do it. And I think it's also because I have so much faith in these dudes and their skill that they could be so, you know what I mean? They could be doing things that are, not that they're not doing things rad, but when I see a video part that someone spent a year doing and it looks like they filmed it all in their neighborhood, you know what I mean? I'm like, dude, put in the work. And half the spots are famous spots. I'm like, man, just go drive around, find your own stuff, and really stop putting some music that you're saying it's chill. This is my chill edit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Go find some music that means something to people and put a mark on BMX that will be there forever. You can't tell me right now, think of a video part that you care about that you're going to watch again that had music of something that someone made. I know music's a little harder to get now, but you think of like that last song at Head First, any of Van Homan's parts, some of the Taj parts, these songs that like even like Dirty Deeds with Painted Black or my song with Kids in the Black Hole. People remember that forever.
Yeah.
That part is 22 years old, or whatever, 20 years old. People still hit me. But I don't know what song some of the best dudes in the world used 5 years ago. Because the part as a whole was collectively made to not leave an impact. You know what I mean? I think.
Yeah. Don't you think that the things have changed so much though since then? And it has. It's been diluted so much, and people are trying to think of new ways to present what's going on, and it doesn't always work.
Totally. But
and we lived in that time where it was vibrant, wasn't it?
Vibrant, yeah. That's a great word for it.
Strong, you know?
Like, and it's like, it's not even the rider's fault, you know what I mean? It's some of the video, you know what I mean? It's like the Vans video. What was that Vans video that came out a while back? It was a huge Vans video a few years back. It was like they had an opportunity to do the best thing ever, and it was arguably one of the worst bike videos ever made. What?
The BMX video.
BMX video. Dak had the last part. It was real long. It was 2 songs. Dak's part kind of saved it, you know. It had like a big dirt jumping section in the middle in the sunlight. It was terrible, and it sucked because like the riding was all good, but the video itself was just missed the mark. And I know people trying to do something new and different, but I see so many video parts now that I feel like would be ones that I would have watched every day before I went riding, and you would have remembered everything about it. And now and it also is, you know, the internet. There's so much coming, but I just feel like there's a few dudes that could, every time they put stuff out, people are watching. You know what I mean? And I don't think that people are remembering. Those parts aren't eliciting the feelings that I think they used to feel. You know what I mean? But it also could be because I'm 100 years old.
Yeah, and you now we have to reach into your pockets to look at a bit of BMX, whereas before you had to wait for a magazine or a video to come out. Like that has an impact. I
mean, bike riding has, I think, not a bike riding, but all of anything that people do has lost its not as mysterious and
totally.
Because if I did a triple tail up today, tomorrow someone's going to do a quadruple tail up online.
Yeah,
because they can see you do it and then it's done. And people, like riders work so hard at these video parts and they don't matter. That's what's a bummer for me. It's like these dudes work so hard and then like a week later, no one's ever talking about it again.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's crazy. When you think about people still talk about, oh, how good was Forward? How good was Grounded? How good was Criminal Mischief?
Yeah, but they had like so much attitude and like they had so much substance to them old videos.
Yeah.
And like you say, the riding was, I mean, for then it was amazing, but like.
Relatively, it's no different than now.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking, you know,
it
was the best at its time to, you know.
Yeah, that's it.
I just think that like, and it's not, like I said, it's not the rider's fault. Just the way the world works now is not conducive to being able to really let these dudes elicit a feeling that is going to outlast them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So yeah, there's some parts over the years that have come out that I think.
But think how many parts come out. Think how much hard work has been put in. You know what I mean? Like there's video parts that have better bike ride than I've ever seen that I've never even seen because the whole idea of the video just didn't elicit anything for me to want to watch it.
Well, I can't remember that Vans video that you're on about.
Well, there you go. And that was probably one of the most expensive bike videos ever made.
Yeah.
Assuming it was Vans and they could do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I just think that, I want BMX to be so good. You know what I mean? And when I see something, I'm like, oh, damn, that missed the mark. When I'm like so excited to see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll see a dude will put a video part out and I'm like, that shit was sick. You know what I mean? It was sick. And it's a dude you wouldn't even think that was going to put something out like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just everything's lost within the fuzz of everything. No, that's what I find.
Which is probably mostly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but like you say, that's the world.
Yeah, that's the world.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that's it, man. I'm stoked. Thanks for having me on, man.
Oh no, thank you, man. Real good. Like loads of stuff in there that I needed to know. Yeah. That was amazing.
If there's more, we'll do a number 2 sometime.
All right, man. No worries.
The next decade.
Well, them stem cells. Where do they get them stem cells from? That's what I wondered.
The ones I'm doing, they're umbilical stem cells, so they're from the umbilical cord, and they can turn into whatever. So if you have a little bit of meniscus in your knee left, shoot it into your knee. In theory, it should grab a hold and turn into that, so you can regrow stuff. Yeah.
Was that Ellis and those guys who you got that from?
No, those dudes all went to a place in Colombia. These guys opened another place that does stuff. Opened a place right over the border in Tijuana, so dudes didn't have to fly down to.
Oh, okay.
They bought a cancer treatment center, and they opened a place called Chipsa, so you can go right over the border. So I'm going to fly down there, but I'll be there for a week.
All right, man. All right. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah. I'll send you a message. See how it goes. When you getting that done? Mid-December. Okay. Oh, not long. Yeah.
My biggest one is my knees and my spine. Get my knees back so I can ride without them. Just after an hour of riding now, and my knee will just blow up, and I can't walk for a couple days.
Oh fuck!
But 6 knee surgeries will do that, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Oh man. All right, man. All right, no worries. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, man. So good to see you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, I'll talk to you soon, man.